OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It is Tuesday morning after the bank holiday weekend. Everybody's feeling bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Shane's here.
Good morning.
Cameron's here.
Hello.
Croaky voices all round.
Yeah.
Happy Sixmas indeed.
We just hit puberty at the weekend, that's all that happened.
Good weekend then?
Good weekend, solid.
A little bit. Yeah.
Bit of partying was done.
Yeah.
Don't know what you
Yeah,
count.
enjoying this February bank holiday stuff. More of the same, please.
Oh, hook it to my veins.
Yeah.
Aren't we still behind the European average? Doesn't everybody else around Europe get to party more often, more frequently and
Yeah.
deeper than we do?
Definitely. I was in France for May Day last year, which like Labour Day, and the place totally shuts down. Like you can't get a metro in Lyon at all that day.
Well,
it is
that's not
incredible.
I mean,
I do.
Now, they could be on
understand.
strike as well. That could be.
Yeah. Or maybe we could just pay people properly for doing that very vital work.
Yeah.
That would be okay for them to work on a holiday because they get it back.
Yeah.
we should do a 4-day week all the time. I mean, it's been mooted before, hasn't it? We should follow. I don't know what the Scandinavians do, but they probably do that.
Well,
they
they
probably
just-
work a 2-day week.
They take a long time off in the summer.
See?
They do float in a bed of oil in Norway though, so they're allowed, it's possible for them to do that.
Yeah.
We haven't quite got that cracked.
No, but we're getting there. An extra bank holiday is nice, and hopefully next year we can add another one and just keep that going.
Bohemian 29 says it's Tuesday, lads. I did say it's Tuesday, didn't I?
You did.
It's the Tuesday after the bank holiday Monday.
I think.
Yeah.
It
No,
just-
you said it right. You said it right.
I also think you have to give a bit of leeway today. It does feel like a Monday. It is the Mondayest of Tuesdays that I've felt in a while since maybe the start after Christmas.
The thing is, if we had been in yesterday, though, the weekend was so incredible and so full of stuff that everybody would have been like, oh my God, what a weekend. Whereas now it feels a little bit too far away for us to be going, yeah, the rugby was good, wasn't it? As
Yeah.
opposed to, oh my God.
Yeah, the rugby. Nearly feels like we're closer to France than we are to the Welsh game at this stage. Not far off. Does feel like a while ago. Yeah, the weekend was fairly busy. The less talk about the Monaghan game, the better. So if we focus on the rugby solely today, that would be great.
The big city today. Big city today is obviously the story that the big story today is obviously that Manchester City are facing 115 charges. We'll get into this in the performance rankings. We'll also get into it a little bit later on in more detail. We're going to talk hurling. We're going to talk football. We look back. We look forward. If there's any trends that you're seeing from the start of the league, we'd love to hear from you. If you're one of the hundreds of thousands of people who've been at matches over the course of the weekend, Quinlan's going to be in studio around about 8:05. Performance rankings are next, and we'll hear from Sarah Dulliman on the hurling, Anthony Moyles on the football, and Morty McCarthy, a member of the Sultans of Ping FC, is going to join us at 9:15. They're playing a gig in Cork Opera House this weekend, and of course, we have used their music to play out the evening show for at least half a decade at this stage. So I'm very much looking forward to that. If you have any Sultans of Ping stories that you'd like to share with us in the YouTube comments, or indeed at all on Twitter, at @OffTheBallAM is the Twitter account, and we'd love to hear from you. If there's any of the stories over the course of the last few days that we haven't got to, unfortunately we don't have time to do Rashida Adelecki properly on the show this morning, but that is a global superstar in the making, who obviously we've been following closely over the last couple of years, and we'll talk about her performance at the weekend when she ran the fastest 400 metres ever by an Irish woman in America. It wasn't America, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Over the next few days we'll talk about that. And what else are we missing this morning?
I think there was a lot happening, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
we can gloss over Monaghan, Mayo. We don't need to talk about
What are we
those.
talking about? Sorry, the Sultans of Ping. Is the Sultans of Ping the best band name there has ever been? Like, someone pointed out the Chinese Spy Balloon would be a good name for a band, an indie band maybe. But I just think the Sultans of Ping. I was on a J1 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Not to tangent away too far, but a lot of my friends who I still follow on Snapchat and Instagram had videos of the Chinese Spy Balloon over them.
All right.
And then, of course, the stream as it was shot down by America or the Air Force. So yeah, it appeared to be over South Carolina when it came to its demise.
Is
I was following that story closely.
Is South Carolina amazing?
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. I have the flag of South Carolina tattooed on my ankle.
All right.
Well, the palm tree and the moon, which appears on the flag. So, fun facts on a Tuesday morning, folks.
And what else? What about Myrtle Beach was so spectacular? Were you just carrying a golf bag for the summer?
No. I was working in a bar and I was working in a candy store. 2 jobs. I was a pretty hard worker. and we played hard as well. Let's be honest. They call it Dirty Myrtle because it's a bit tacky. It's very tacky actually. But yeah, when you move away from the coast a little bit and just see the other parts of South Carolina, it's quite a nice place to be.
Right, we're just going to let that float in the ether for a second there. Dirty Myrtle.
Yeah.
That's your new quiz, crappy quiz nickname.
Make of that what you will, yeah.
It says Monday on the YouTube stream. There you go.
Yeah, whoever's in charge
of
setting all that up.
Bohemian 29, there you go. YouTube has OTB AM Monday live on it. Oh yeah, all right.
In charge of that should really...
just can't get to people these days. It's just...
should really get her.
Is that you, Cameron?
Maybe.
You're taking no blame for that.
There you go. Everybody, killing no more on Bright-eyed, except the thumbnail Monday. Is Ger going to wind everybody up? No, I'm not going to wind everybody and their mum up anymore. Those days are over. The Netherlands is crap for public holidays, says Deck 1000 Lan. And if they fall on the weekend, tough luck, no Monday off in lieu. Well, I mean,
them's the breaks.
That's not great.
No.
That's just not great. That's far too efficient.
Yeah.
It's 7:36. It's time for the Gillette Labs performance rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Yeah, I knew there was something else we're not going to get time to do properly this morning. Shifty Lad says the Dublin Racing Festival was a huge success according to all the podcasts from England yesterday. Credit to everyone involved. Record numbers that they haven't seen in 20 years. Record bookmakers turnovers and Honeysuckle turned over, but now potentially going for the Mayor's Hurdle at Cheltenham, and so maybe a swan song at Cheltenham with another success. But what an incredible story that's been. I don't know, where would you put Honeysuckle? Like you can't put a horse that's given so much joy in the red. I think it would have been Amber, but she doesn't make the cut today. So
yeah, I saw the argument on the TV kind of after the race of the weekend when State Man did the job, wondering, do you put Honeysuckle into the Mayor's Hurdle, or do you just let her go off into the sunset? Because you could win the Mayor's Hurdle and then it's out in a bang. But then if she goes to the Mayor's Hurdle and doesn't win,
it doesn't really matter though. At this stage, the career is so great already. And there's no questions of health or anything. We've been talking about her for the last number of years. I think the plan was always to run this year, and then they'll try and put her in foal, and away you go.
Yeah, and I was concerned of the champion hurdle when you see her tail off a little bit, and State Man pulls ahead. That chasing pack, she was going to kind of move towards the back, but no, held on for second, which an impressive showing, because it was actually a decent race. It's
been confirmed this morning she's staying in training for the, according to Richard Redballs, she's staying in training for the Mayor's, confirmed this morning, and we're being threatened by one of our own here. Bobby Dwyer says if Spurs and Kane aren't in the green and switching to second captains, it's not in the green. I mean, we knew it's like he's not getting special medals for delivering the post today.
Yeah.
Well, come back to me when he's broken like the actual Greaves record of goals in the top flight, which is 140 more to go.
But famously, football didn't exist before 1992.
Of course, true.
I think we have to,
Kane's bringing medals to North London.
He's now
for Arsenal.
He's cracked the top 30 of top flight goal scorers.
Right, wow.
But is he third in the Premier League? Is that it now?
Yeah, after Shearer and Rooney.
Yeah.
Is he the greatest product of the Arsenal youth system? I saw someone questioning at the weekend. He possibly is. He's the greatest player to come out of the Arsenal academy. I can't think of any better. I mean, I know that's going to wind up Arsenal fans, but it's going to wind up Tottenham fans.
Well, it shouldn't. It should just wind up the Arsenal fans, really.
Yeah.
And the whole, he's doing this for Arsenal. It's like, season not over. It's turning into a pretty good season. Anyway, we better get into this, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So every week we put stuff in the red, stuff in the amber, stuff in the green. It's hard to find the amber sometimes. We nearly shoehorned Irish rugby into the amber this week, but we didn't do it. I think we're stretching with the amber myself this week, even though it was my idea. But let's go.
Yeah, we'll start with the red, and it was a definite red weekend on and off the pitch for Manchester City. The Premier League have declared war on Manchester City out of the weekend. The biggest ever scandal. Champions charged with over 100 rule breaches. And if this goes the full shebang, City could be stripped of titles. They could be relegated. They'll certainly could be fined a lot of money. City claiming innocence on all of this. So this is a 4-year investigation. 100 breaches of financial rules committed allegedly between 2009 and 2018. And they've also accused the Premier League of City not cooperating since the investigation started back in December of 2018. And of course, City deny it. They had a meeting on Monday with staff, said they expect this to go away. They were surprised by the charges and supported, quote, by a body of irrefutable evidence. So, as I said, the range of punishments, lads, here is fairly wide. Of course, we're putting them in the red as well because of the loss to Spurs of the weekend. But really, these financial rule irregularities or alleged ones are pretty worrying for Man City fans and for the club, you'd imagine.
They don't do anything in small measure. It had to be 115, right? Charges.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Excessive.
It's systemic and ongoing is essentially what they're being charged with, and it's been happening since the very start. You'll remember that they were charged with by UEFA of breaches a couple of years back, and then they took the case all the way to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and they won that, and they viewed that as a victory for them and putting the matter to bed. But obviously that was the European stuff. The local English stuff, it turns out, is equally important, and they don't have recourse to the Court of Arbitration for Sport this time, so it'll be the London courts that they've got to go to. And again, very interesting to see how that all plays out, because an independent panel is going to be appointed to judge the allegations that are made against City. We don't know when that's going to happen. The timing of this has all been accused of being politically motivated. City didn't hear about it in advance. Some journalists heard about it first, shockingly.
Ooh.
Imagine some people doing their jobs and breaking stories. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. And once the independent commission hear, they'll make their adjudication, and then it could go to the commercial courts in London. So this story could actually be 18 months. We could be two years away before finding the end of the story and being able to firmly say these are the regulations that they breached here, and here, and these are the appropriate penalties. However, the stink around Manchester City now because of this, well, that is deep-seated, and there was always a sense that there's something wrong about the amount of money that they're able to spend on everything all the time. Now, I have a similar sense that there's something wrong about all the money that's being spent at the moment,
generally
by other clubs, right? Mm-hmm. But let's wait and see how they have disrupted the financial markets, because we're disruptors, we can do this. It's like, well, okay, if you can do it legally, show us how.
You would want the Premier League, if these charges are found, or any of the charges are found to be legitimate, you'd want them to come down hard, because this can't happen in football. I mean, Bonnie Ronay wrote a great piece in The Guardian on this, where he's talking about the fact that sport only works if it's on a level playing field, which seems an obvious thing to say. But if there are clubs that are allegedly cheating in this way, financially, I mean, it's one of the easiest ways to breed success, is to kind of skip the rules a little bit here and there.
They're saying it's going to put an asterisk beside the Aguero moment forever if it's proven that at that point they were guilty of breaching the financial rules.
Yeah, and the rules are so vast and wide-ranging for anyone who hasn't really tuned into this story. So some of the charges. So you're talking about failing to provide accurate financial information over sponsorship revenue, which is some of it. Not disclosing managers' true salary is other parts of it.
Why would they not just have said what the salary was? So essentially, because it's going to have an impact on their financial fair play, is that it? It's like,
I assume there's knock-on effects.
We've overspent on our manager. It's funny because in American football, the amount you spend on the coaches doesn't actually doesn't count against your cap. So again, that you can have an arms race there, and I don't know, maybe football, it was like an oversight. It's like, well, why don't we just allow us to pay the best managers whatever we want? But it's because it's linked to your turnover and profit and profitability over a period of time. Financial fair play was deliberately opaque so that the best clubs would be able to manipulate it originally anyway.
Yeah.
And if Man City, if it turns out that Man City were unable to finesse that, then they just weren't paying attention. And that's that's bad enough.
Yeah. There's
a lot of sympathy around this morning, I noticed, for Manchester City from fans of other clubs. They really feel like that plucky underdog is just not getting a fair crack of the whip.
Yeah. Well, look, if this goes as bad as it could possibly go for Man City, it could be a case of, those great clubs, the clubs that were in the Premier League once upon a time and went all the way down.
Preston, North End.
Well, yeah. The clubs that just went. Look, you've seen it happen in the North when clubs go into administration, like up in Scotland, like Rangers. Clubs can come back.
Freudian slip there, Shane.
The north of the UK, of course. But clubs can bounce back. But if 115 rules are found to have been breached, I mean, City should be slapped very, very hard on the wrists.
You make a good point, though. Will they? That's the thing. If we could go, as you say, it could take 18 months to 2 years, Ger.
Yeah.
And we could go through all of this and go through the nitty gritty of what it is they actually breached, and then the punishment and the sentence hand down mightn't even correlate, and it'll be kind of like what's happening with Will Still at Ross. And it could be a fine, they could be dock points, they could look at that as price of doing business. Look, as long as we can, it's just a cost we're going to have to incur.
Here's the point. I think you make a good point that they qualify for all those Champions Leagues. They've invested all this money in their youth system, which is now starting to produce footballers at a very high level. They hoovered up all the best young talent, and they have now become sustainable in recent years, where they can sell players for high amounts of money who are England internationals and top quality internationals around the world. And their net spend over the last couple of seasons hasn't been that much, because obviously you inject the billion into the club and you run it properly, and then you've used that as a competitive advantage. So it might just be the cost of doing business that they get stripped of some of these titles. But if they get relegated, it's very difficult to come back from that quickly. That would be a proper punishment if this is proven. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Will Pep Guardiola be happy being associated with this club in this moment when these allegations are made, or will he come out fighting and say this is all nonsense? I've been given access to all the stuff that we put forward for the European campaign in the courts, in the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and I've seen all that, and I trust the people, and I'm here for the long haul. Or
yeah, they could dig their heels in. They could be like, even if they were found guilty, it could be a Lance Armstrong job. Keep the 6 Premier League trophies on the museum wall.
That's it. And what if they win the Champions League this year? Does Pep walk away then and say, well, I've looked into it and I need to preserve my integrity and I'm stepping away?
Or does he step away because there are no more mountains to climb?
Yeah.
I think that there's no actual stripping them will be very difficult.
Yeah.
According to the bits that I've seen today, and again, you're kind of just trying to piece it together from the different reporting. They could. There is an underexplained, kind of flabby piece of language which allows you to do whatever is deemed necessary to maintain the reputation of the competition. So they could, under that, go, well, this is so egregious that we're taking back the trophies, but very difficult to do. I think the other thing is that there's no sympathy from the other Premier League clubs here.
Zero.
And so they all are looking at this going, if City are found to have breached the rules that we followed, well, then they have to pay. And that will be the bit where the court case is taken by City against whatever findings are, and then all the rest of the clubs will go, screw you, I'm sorry, but we would have qualified for Europe, and we would have had those young players, and we would have been the ones who were able to sell hundreds of millions of sponsorship to those companies who were interested in getting involved. So
the mad part of it was that, as you said, Ger, the surprise that City got. Apparently this was delivered, these legal papers were delivered by a courier on Monday to the Etihad. I imagine being that courier, who has no idea possibly what he's delivering. He is literally delivering legal papers to Manchester City over 115 alleged breaches. So I'd have loved to have seen that.
Do you reckon it happens like in the US TV shows where it's like you've been served and they use a sort of weird chicanery to get the paper into their hand because
Really
that's how they serve them?
Yeah.
hey, I've got I don't know what you'd be giving to those people at Man City who have literally everything that money can buy in the world. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. What's next?
Yeah, next we'll move on to Liverpool, who had a bad weekend, it has to be said. They're having a lot of bad weekends recently, Jurgen Klopp. Getting increasingly tetchy, I've noticed in the post-match press conferences, but you can kind of understand it, given the results. A 3-0 defeat to Wolves at the weekend. The first 12-15 minutes of that game were abysmal. As bad at the performance early on in a match as you'll see from a team. Liverpool haven't won a Premier League game yet in 2023. Third time in a row Liverpool have lost away from home in the league. I mean, Jimmy Carragher was on the telly at the weekend after the game and kind of backing Jurgen Klopp, saying there's no chance that anyone else comes in and takes over from him. And I don't think that narrative has moved that direction yet, that Klopp is not the man for the job, but certainly there's a lot of negativity around the team. Joel Matip was crap. I mean, if you watch back a couple of the goals, it's not just the concession of 3 goals against Wolves. It's the manner of the goals. They were asleep for most of them. Like the defendant, it's like they just the chasm in midfield that opened up for some of the goals, and there was chances for Wolves as well to maybe score more goals in that game. You'd be concerned. Darwin Núñez not scoring goals, still not scoring goals. He had a few chances 1-on-1 at the weekend that he couldn't take. But I don't know, is Klopp in denial a little bit? Because some of the comments after the match, and I'm just reading some of them here in front of me, he's talking about it, the first 12 minutes of course being horrible, but then he kind of backtracked a little bit and said, later on in the game, the other 78 minutes were actually okay. The opening 25 minutes of the second half, he said, were brilliant. But I mean, that's kind of a bit of a stretch. Mo Salah isn't doing Mo Salah things. He's that expectation that he's going to bend the ball into the far left corner with that left foot just doesn't happen anymore. So all these little things that made Liverpool so great over previous seasons just aren't there. And they look a little bit broken as a football club on the pitch at the moment. Tired maybe is the word.
Well, maybe, I think you're right in terms of Klopp maybe not seeing what's in front of him, and in terms of delusional managers, we'll get to Leeds in a sec, but do we not give enough credit to the other teams that are actually putting performances against Liverpool? I think Wolves were quite good, even if the third goal was like shambolic defending. And the other teams they've lost to, like Brighton and Brentford, they've been quite good too, and like are resurgent. So I think we also have to give credit to the teams who are putting performances against them, even if it's against a team.
They've hammered Liverpool though. It hasn't been like those games have all been one-sided. It's not like, it doesn't feel like Liverpool are in these games.
It's because of the drop-off in previous seasons, the level we expect of Liverpool.
That was 9 points chalked down at the start of the season. They'll win that, they'll win that, they'll win that.
Yeah.
And those 9 points are the difference between them being in the hunt for Champions League place. I do think this season is really interesting. Like, it's possible we're going to have a proper title race. And this stuff around City, like, the players' agents are going to be going, what happens if we get relegated, off the field? Do I get paid less? How does that work? I mean, if we get relegated because performances on the field, I understand that I'm going to get paid less if I have to play a season in the Championship to get them back up. But like, I didn't do anything wrong. I fulfilled my part of it. So you can see how they might be weak. Arsenal might be Arsenal. We don't know after the performance at the weekend. And so there are teams definitely improving is my point. But at the same time, Liverpool are abject.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to hear from the Liverpool fans, because it was Sadio Mane's energy and the creative tension he had with Mo Salah, that's gone. And then it was like, well, the midfield are no good because they haven't signed anybody, but they're all on big contracts. And now it's the defence are also shite. And like, literally everything is bad.
Yeah.
So at that point you're going, something else is happening here. Something is... What Liverpool fans? Let's be having you.
Something pretty grim. Is there actually no universe in which Liverpool get rid of Jurgen Klopp? Like, does he have so much credit in the bank that...
No, there's the only...
he has to step aside.
He has to want to go. And it hasn't reached that point, I don't think. If they honestly believe that they could sign Jude Bellingham in the summer, there's no way he's going to go. I mean, I think he thinks that he's got forwards who will at some point gel, and maybe they sell Salah in the summer and that relationship is over and they use a bit of that money to reinvest. I don't know, but like...
I think Sadio Mane was so important, and sometimes you only know what you got till it's gone.
But that's like one tiny part of it. Why is everybody else playing shite?
Well, yeah.
Whatever about the press that Sadio Mane had and his goal scoring, like, okay, you take that out of the team, it's very important, but at the same time they still have players who, like Sadio Mane missed some big games over the years because of injury, missed portions of the season because of injury. They were fine. They weren't incredible, but like...
Even Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, who once bombed up and down wings, raiding teams, like, they just look afraid to do it now. Afraid is probably actually the perfect word. There's just a little bit of fear in this Liverpool team at the moment. And when you start to lose games and you keep losing games one after the other, the fear just mounts and pressure mounts. I'm looking at the top 5 lads for the next permanent Liverpool manager, the odds. You've got Ange Postecoglou in 5th, Julian Nagelsmann as the 4th favourite, Stevie Gerrard 9-2, 3rd favourite. That's not
That'd be great.
I will lay you any money. Steven Gerrard will not be.
No, not a chance.
Whatever odds you want, folks.
Tommy Tuchel is the 2nd favourite at 4-1, and the 5-2 favourite is Pep Lijnders to be next permanent.
I don't think they're going to give Pep Lijnders the job to step up, are they?
I wouldn't have thought so, but if they want continuity, maybe that's the thinking from the bookies. But
can we just also have a minute for like Klopp's ridiculous? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to talk to you. And then also somebody else. That's the bit where the whole press corps is supposed to stand up and walk out. Like
solidarity.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit where you're not just. That all made me feel uncomfortable, but like that's ridiculous behaviour. Just answer the question and go, and explain to everybody else why you don't think this person is worthy of answering. What is it specifically that caused you to think, okay, you're not worthy of, even though you're here in a work capacity, I don't have to answer you? Because it's like, I mean, whatever the story was that pissed you off, talk about that and address it or counteract it. But I don't know, that's a bit where, so I don't think there's any world in which FSG say, okay, you're not our guy, because he's so spectacularly important and clearly one of the best managers over the last 2 decades. Now, maybe there's just a natural peak in his cycle and that peak is over and he's got to go again, and maybe he'll do that somewhere else. But when that stuff starts happening, you can't pull the Alex Ferguson bully and ban people from your press conferences the way you used to just get away with it. You can't do that anymore because the world has moved on. And it's those type of things that where it just becomes like, I don't really need this. I don't need this.
Yeah.
So
his press conferences have reached epic proportions of Kloppisms.
Yeah, it's real Hurricane Neddy. When Ned Flanders kind of loses the rag, feels what's happened to our fallen angel.
So Liverpool fans won't be happy. We'll move on to the Amber, because another club's fan base who won't be happy this morning, and plenty of them in Ireland, are Leeds United. Jesse Marsch has been relieved of his duties. I'm sure he is probably relieved to be out of the club, given how things have gone recently for them. But 7 games without a Premier League victory for Leeds United. Jesse Marsch, of course, replacing Marcelo Bielsa. It was never an easy job to have to take over February of last year. Losing 1-0 to Nottingham Forest at the weekend, and that was all she wrote for Jesse Marsch at the club. The statement from the club: Jesse joined the club in February 2022 and was instrumental in keeping the club in the Premier League in the final day of last season. But I mean, where do they turn to now, Leeds United as a football club? I often find when you sack it's February, season ends in May. Do you not just hold firm? Things are going to come good. Relegation is probably, in my opinion, now a certainty for Leeds. I think they're going to go down.
Then they can't be in the Amber.
Well,
at least play along with this bit.
Why? Okay, so we're putting them in the Amber because
there's a hope that they might get a Sean Dyche bounce.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not going to get Sean Dyche. Who do they go to? 17th. They're still out of the relegation zone, I should say. Only on goal difference.
Yeah, tied with Everton, funnily enough.
Carlos Corberán, obviously.
Yeah, well, that's the most Premier League appointment ever. Probably the most Leeds United appointment ever. Cameron, you're a Leeds United fan. Where do they go now?
Where do they go?
Where do they go from here? I don't know. It's very hard. I see. The thing about Jesse that's really, really interesting is that the team weren't playing terribly. The narrative for the last couple of weeks is they've been playing quite well and they've been putting in good performances, but it's just not turning into results. I think a lot of that is the fact that the players have gotten better, for want of a better phrase. Patrick Bamford's back from injury and he's been struggling and he seems to be in fine form. We've got Nanto. Rutter was a signing that really shows promise, even though his Bundesliga record wouldn't have inspired anybody, but this season at least. There's still a lot to be kind of positive about from the player front, and it seems just that they were tactically inept, and you watch them and it doesn't look great. Their defence, they can't keep their shape at all. The Brentford game for me was the most frustrating game in recent memory because they just kept going through the middle in terms of their attack. Harrison kept getting in Nanto's way and they just kept pushing, doing the definition of insanity, repeating that through the middle, which Brentford just flooded with their defenders. So there is a sort of lack of game smarts there. And, you always think it's such a backhanded compliment when people see Marsch going and go, well, decent guy.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. Really fond of him. But it just hasn't worked. And Corberán might bring back some of the Bielsa optimism and that sort of attacking thrust that they need, because apparently some of the players weren't very happy with how Jesse was approaching games tactically. But to answer your question, where do they go from here? I don't know.
Well, there's a danger with Corberán too, because you got to look at, great manager in the Championship. He's doing great things at West Brom, but look at Nathan Jones at Southampton. I mean, he was a great manager in the Championship. But the Premier League is a different kettle of fish. It's tough.
Was he great in the Championship? I mean, was he okay? Anyway,
okay.
he says he's one of the best managers in Europe. Nathan Jones getting the boot as well, apparently. I was recruited to do certain things, says Nathan Jones, after his team got hammered again, 6 defeats in 7 Premier League games. I was recruited to do certain things, and I don't see my team in there. I've pandered a little bit. It's like, if it's not your team, mate, whose team is it?
Passing the buck.
So apparently the board are like, what? Nathan? Sorry, pardon me? Excuse me? Okay, all right. Let's see how you get on against Wolves. And so they got Wolves, and then he's going to get fired after that. So
It's come into a bit weak, I think.
it took a long time for them to start sacking managers this season in the Premier League, but when they did, they were up there with the best of them.
Not in single spies.
It's going to be a vintage year.
Yeah, it's like the Dublin bus. So that's where Leeds belong, I think, in the amber, because fair enough.
You think they're in the red? You're
They should
hoping
be.
that they might be somehow able to turn it around.
I think,
I don't know. It's guaranteed they're going down. Still think there's loads of people who could get sucked into that.
Yeah, well, their next 2 games, they've got a double header against Manchester United, starting tomorrow night.
Should be great fun.
That's going to be interesting.
Is one of them a cup game though?
Both league.
Both league.
Both
One's
league.
rearranged.
Right.
So I think the Queen's passing led to all these.
Yes.
Was that
double
this
headers.
season?
I know, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Apparently so.
What a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some year, lads. Some year.
You forget there's a World Cup in the middle of it all too.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll get to the green, the positive stories. Irish rugby has to be in the green. We were kind of debating whether we put it in the amber. That would have been a bit unfair.
Just because of the injuries. That's
Just because of the
all.
injuries,
And the
yeah.
And also, we just don't want to get too excited too early. The hype train is choo choo, and we're like, oh my God, this is terrible. We're so good. We're so bloody good.
Can we just stop that crap? Because as an Irish nation, why are we so afraid? It's like
Because
anytime-
history.
Yeah, but anytime we talk about Evan Ferguson on this show or things that we're excited about, we get slaughtered. Oh, stop it. Stop getting so excited with yourselves. Ireland could win the World Cup. Let's be honest.
Oh, Shane.
No, Shane.
Shane,
number one in the
wash your
world.
mouth out with soap
Stop.
and water.
Oh, we're number 1 in the world.
it.
Stop.
Some of the Welsh press are calling us all black-esque. We didn't even
They're
play
just
well.
suckering you. That's all they're doing. They're
Sorry.
setting you up for a fall.
We beat Wales in Cardiff for the first time in 10 years by 24 points, and we didn't play that well. It's not even a hot take. We're the best team in the world at the minute.
This is like Ireland looked in the mirror today at Fortune's teeth marks still in its ass.
But why are we so afraid of this? Get your stick that. I heard Gordon Darcy after the match, and he made a very good point. So Ashton was talking to Paul O'Connell last week about the fact that his great Irish team and Darcy's and Rodgers and all that era, they didn't really lean into the whole "we're really good at the minute" thing. Whereas this Irish team, this is not coach Andy Farrell, who has said he's met with Alex Ferguson and Mikel Arteta and people who breed success and continue success. They don't just get to the top, but they want to stay there and be mentally okay with being the best team in the world or being constantly great.
Arteta hasn't done it yet.
No, Arteta hasn't done it yet, but
Point
he
of
could win the
information.
Premier League, and he's worked under Pep, and he's had success. But that, I think, is the difference in this Irish team and great Irish teams of times gone by that won Grand Slams.
I hope you're right.
They're okay with being at the top.
I think Joe Schmidt's team were okay at being at the top. I definitely remember pre-World Cup, the Ireland team in 07 were like, oh, we're going there to win it. And then
Yeah, but the same weaknesses came up in World Cups. They were a great team under Schmidt, but the same weaknesses came up in the World Cup. They can't get past that last 8 phase. I think if Ireland get past the last
have you
8
seen
phase,
our group of death?
Yeah,
all of a
they're-
sudden
they're
Scotland
all
aren't
in the-
shite anymore.
Yeah.
All in the top 5.
But we shouldn't fear anyone.
We don't fear them, but like
This is the point now. The way Ireland are playing, just have
you
no,
just
have no
jinxed
fear.
it. Now your fault. Officially, it's
See,
your
this is
fault.
I'm not a superstitious person anyway, so that's all a load of crap. But just let us believe we could win the World Cup.
We could.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to believe anything.
Shane is
Sorry, people say in the comments I'm jinxing nothing. Sorry, whether or not we win the World Cup is not to do with me sitting here in a corner in a studio in Dublin saying they're going to win the World
for
Cup
the
in
viewers.
February.
Shane is just he's conscious of the fact that he tipped Ireland to win the World Cup in the crystal ball.
Did I actually? Yeah.
You did.
Okay, there you go. Stand by
So
it. Yeah. We thrashed Wales in Cardiff.
Yeah, but
Let's
it's a
get
shite
excited.
Wales.
Yeah,
And
it's a shite
actually
Wales, but-
in the first half, they were a bunch of outlaws. In the second half, they started to remember what they were supposed to do. Now, I definitely think we took our foot off
Completely,
a little bit.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
that was.
I think we beat the French this weekend, and then the hype train really pulls out from the station.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Quinny's standing by. We'll talk to him in a minute about that. If you're watching this on podcast, then make sure you subscribe to the OTB Rugby feed to hear his thoughts. What else is in the green?
Yeah, last one in the green. We're going to lump them in together. They never really get paired together, these two, but they're friends down in Munster. Friends is a stretch. Cork and Kerry. Both had a great weekend in terms of Gaelic games. I mentioned Cork first. The hurlers, of course, with a 1-point win over Limerick. Talking about hype trains, it's early in the season.
Well, they were double scores down at half time.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking about that.
Attitude, proper attitude
Yeah.
from Cork, you have to say. And then the footballers, Ger, I don't know if you want to really touch on this, but they were very, very dominant in the win over Kildare in Division 2.
In Newbridge.
In Newbridge as well.
Kind of hockey Kildare.
Yeah, and James O'Donoghue was on the football pod with Tommy and Paddy recently enough at the start of the season saying Cork were his surprise package for the season.
Yeah.
You can kind of see.
It dropped early this week, so you can hear, I'm sure he's like, the cat that got the cream this week. It's like, well, it's just a week early.
Yeah, look how right I was. But I mean, if you're a Cork fan, in terms of Gaelic games, generally speaking, this morning, 7 points for Kildare at home is not a great return, is it?
We're talking about Cork here, Shane.
Sorry, we're talking about Cork. We'll forget about them. 1-6 to no score up in the 20th minute. They went on to score 2-14 in that match. It was a dominant game. You can't read too much into these games massively in Division 2 because it's so tight that there's going to be nothing between the team that wins Division 2 and the teams that get relegated points-wise.
You do want to be hockey in the opposition, though. That's a good scenario for them to be in. And we've been talking about the Red Storm rising for the last decade, really, since they started to produce all those great underage teams. So there's a slew of talent. It looks like everything off the pitch is working for both the hurlers and the footballers. They've got a really progressive county board. They know exactly what they're doing. Everybody is aligned. And I think, fear the red menace that is Cork. They're coming for you.
I can hear Buhig purring from wherever he is in the world right now.
He's in Prague somewhere, I think. The fact that Brian Cleary will be very, very happy with his Cork footballers conceding 3 against Meath last week and to concede none against Kildare. This clearly, I mean, you can't sort defensive frailties out in 1 week, but clearly not conceding goals is a very good way to win a match of Gaelic football.
We're burying the lead here, though.
Yeah, Kerry.
It turns out Kerry have a new wunderkind. David Clifford, your time here as the greatest footballer in the Kerry full forward line was brief, dynamic and short, but you burned like a Roman candle, and now it turns out there's somebody else.
Yeah, he was in the crowd watching David Clifford, mouth agape, probably just because he was eating a twister or some other lollipop in the stands, but no, Donald Down O'Sullivan. This is a man Kerry fans are very, very excited about. I don't think we're overstating it. I think this is, as you said, Ger, wunderkind. There is something to this lad. At club level, I mean, there was a club game earlier in the year. He plays for Kilgarvan. He's the first ever, and this is a proud moment. I think the club tweeted a lovely tweet at the weekend. First ever Kilgarvan footballer to line out for Kerry's senior team. He scored 2-13 for his club in a game in which they scored 2-15 in a novice final not so long ago.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. And Dara Roach is another as well in that full forward line who I've been very impressed with. I watched him against Donegal last week. Even though they lost, he was brilliant. And similarly against Monaghan, he just looked bigger than everyone. But Donal is young. He has got time on his hands.
This is their Conor Callahan moment.
This is. I mean, if you're All Ireland champions, how do you push on the next year? Well, you find 1 or 2 quality players, and Kerry have done that. At this stage, Kerry are 100% the favourites for the All Ireland. There's no doubt about it.
The hype train. After the first week, we opened Donegal, and it's like, this is. But it was just the first game back.
Yeah.
First game at home, they're like, oh no, we've got new superstars here. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. With Donald Down scored 1-3 against Monaghan. Now, albeit the Monaghan defence, it's a young Monaghan team at the moment. They opened up a couple of times for them, and Paulie Clifford came off the bench to score a goal. It was a great goal, but I mean the defence opened up for him. He ran most of the length of the pitch to finish it off. But Donald Down, he's a very impressive talker, I thought as well. He spoke on TG Carr after the game and has his head screwed on for a young lad playing his first match.
You would need to if you're gonna try and force your way into the Kerry full forward line. After they've just won the All Ireland, you'd need to be fairly screwed on. Otherwise,
100%,
just get burned out. But we will talk about this in more detail a little bit later on with Anthony Moyles, but keep an eye on Donald Down, and they're very excited about it. So Kerry in the green.
Kerry, well deserved.
Cementing their place at the top of the power rankings as well. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the week. It's 9 minutes past 8. That is this week's episode of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings. Up next, Alan Quinlan.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB Sports Rugby.
Yeah, we just can't afford to lose 4 individuals. I'd say Johnny Gibson Park, probably Andrew Porter, and I would say probably Doris.
You see the quotes from Owen Farrell yesterday?
finding his son in the house wearing an Irish rugby jersey. For Grandad,
This is interesting. We've got to give Andy Farrell a job for life, just in case his second son turns out to be just as good as Owen at rugby. Because if he is, we'll have an out half for 15 years.
Subscribe to the Rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, Alan Quinlan's with us. So we were just in the ad break there. What are we going to talk about? The 20s, lots to get too carried away. But Cian Prendergast's little brother is playing 10 for Ireland in the under-20s.
let's get carried away. Let's get carried away.
Little big brother.
Yeah, he's 6'4".
6'4", yeah.
A 6'4", 10.
Yeah, it's very...
Sonny Bill Williams was tweeting about him. Now, World Rugby were calling him Sonny Bill Williams, which is a little bit of pressure, I would say, from World Rugby.
It's amazing.
That's our job, World Rugby.
It's amazing, really, that we often debate. We saw incredible games in the senior games over the weekend, lots of attack and great excitement. But sometimes we have periods in the game where it's bland and it's kicking and it's defence and it's been a real challenge in the professional era. Defensive coaches, very important part of the game if you're a player and if you're a coach. But the way the game has gone, you do a 20s game. Dave and myself were there Friday night doing the commentary for Virgin, and it's excitement. It's not overthinking it. It's trying to play what's in front of you. Obviously, you have a structure and stuff, and that was a great game. Some of the tries, the Welsh backs were outstanding. Louis Hennessy, it's a pity he's not Irish. He's with Bath, incredible player, 13 for Wales. Some really good backs. Ireland were under a lot of pressure early on in that game. I was blown away how big they were. Second rows, Diarmuid Mangan, Conor O'Tierney, and then the back row, McNabney, Ruan Quinn and Brian Gleeson. These guys are
bigger
monsters,
than you.
Yeah, way bigger, yeah, and incredibly fit and strong and athletic. But there was plenty of kind of mistakes in the game by both sides. And worryingly enough, Ireland ended up being 15-14 at half time. It could have been more to Wales, but great response in the second half. But some really exciting, big players in that side. And it was a great game to be at. Hugh Cooney at 13, great footwork. James Nicholson, he went on to the wing, scored 2 tries. So great win for them, and some really strong physical players coming through from the 20s.
It's Sam Prendergast is the brother who plays at 10, isn't that right?
Oh, Sam, yeah, Sam Prendergast, yeah.
Another Kildare. I just want to briefly point this out. So there's him and there's Osborne and there's Jimmy O'Brien. At some stage in the next couple of years, and of course Joey Carberry. At some stage in the next couple of years, Kildare are going to have the entire backline for the Ireland rugby team. And meanwhile, the Gaelic football team are like, come on, lads. Could some of the younger Osborne brothers just decide to pick Gaelic football and we'd all be happy?
And Paul O'Connell's nephew off the bench, Evan O'Connell, or his nephew. He came off the bench. Frankie Sheehan had 2 nephews
on
off
the team.
The bench. Yeah, right. Danny Sheehan and Jacob Sheehan. So. Yeah, it's...
What's a good barometer of success, though? Like, how many of the 20s do you want to see coming through? Obviously, you want to see as many as possible coming through, but how many would you expect to see coming through to the senior setup?
When you look back on the teams who've won Grand Slams or gone deep in World Cups, it's always 4 or 5 who are coming through that.
Yeah, and
now it's not every year that you get 4 or 5, but...
We've all, at this level, sometimes you say physically are they kind of ready for the step up, and there's some of these guys are physically could play now. The number 8, Brian Gleeson, honestly, he's still under 19s. Like, he's
where's he from?
Massive. He's from Tipperary.
Oh, right.
As you're boosting about,
there you go.
boasting about Kildare. He's tip man. Yeah, he's number 8 playing with Gary Owen. He's only 19.
Taking the dubs out of it, who'd have the best
huge.
sevens side? There should be a county sevens competition.
Yes. And Ruan Quinn, who's played, he was the youngest ever debutant for Munster. Back against Zebra in September. He was the 7. James McNabney, the other back row. Honestly, the carries constant from all 3 of them. They were absolutely brilliant.
We're not allowed on the show by our watchers and listeners to get too excited about the hype that's coming up. So let's move to the senior team just to puncture that hype. We were pretty good. We were
very good. I think the start was superb. The efficiency, the accuracy, and everything they were doing. The variety, the width to where they were attacking, even though off line out scrums. Superb at the early parts again. And Wales couldn't do anything about it, where they sluggish and slow to the blocks? Yes, they were. I think the pace and tempo that Ireland played with was really, really, really good. I think collectively they just work. They're so well organised and they know what each player is doing inside and outside in attack and defence. So very, very cohesive. The worrying part obviously was that period in the second half. There was always going to be a response from Wales. They were facing a humiliating loss, and they gained some pride back, which is understandable. I think the 20 minutes probably was a bit too long for Ireland to lose control of it. Their discipline, was poor. And if France are looking at it, or the other teams in the Six Nations, Scotland, they'll see some opportunities there. That kind of 20-minute period, it will be reviewed by the other nations, and you'll see some chances there.
You do wonder how much of that is because Ireland naturally are defending a lead that they know is largely unassailable.
The game is over.
Yeah, it definitely feels over, right?
It's unless Wales come out straight after half time and score 2 quick tries and they get back into the teens and there's 10, 12, 14 points in it, then you're saying next score is going to decide what's going to happen. But it never got to that point. At 27-10 when Liam Williams scored, and then they got the penalty from the restart. Really crucial moment. Andrew Porter, on Liam Williams for the try. If you look at it again, there's nothing really in it at all. There's
it's supposed to be a yellow card, says Scotland. I'm like, hang on a second.
Look, in fairness, if he looks at that afterwards and sees the replays, he slides along the ground. There's no swinging arm. He's a second late. The reaction from the Welsh players was way, way too much, but they were fired up at that stage.
Yeah.
They get the penalty from
There's a fair bit of diving going on, isn't there, in rugby at the moment?
Yeah, there is a little bit. Liam Williams on the Henderson one. I think the Welsh were questioning Johnny Sexton. How big a hit was it from Liam Williams? I thought a penalty was enough, to be honest. And that's, at the time, I think I said it in commentary, I think, letter of the law, the yellow is there, but I think it's a harsh one. I think it's, even though it's top of the shoulder, top of the arm, but from that restart, that penalty that they got after Liam Williams tried, they kicked down to the 22 and crooked line out. That was the time, win the line out, creep another 3 points maybe out of it, get a penalty kick,
Yeah.
Suddenly the crowd are really, really winding up, whereas crooked throw scrum Ireland, they were able to get out again.
Yeah.
But the game management could have been a bit better at that period of time.
What could we have done differently? Like when you say
well,
game
look, it's easy in hindsight. On the run, they're backing what they're doing and they're trying to build phases. And I just thought some of the kicking could have been better. And tactically, we could have used James Lowe a little bit to get some distance in the kicks, not putting it up in the air. But we didn't have a lot of ball. The possession was starved. So I think the possession starts completely swung around to 65-70% was now with Wales in that second half. So just when you're giving away the penalties, I think, and look, some of them were very marginal, like some of the Welsh ones in the first half, but you've got to be squeaky clean in that moment. It's easier said than done. When the pressure is on, don't make it more difficult. Try and force a mistake, let them keep battering away, and eventually they'll break down and we'll get a turnover. But I just thought a couple of them were soft. They'll know that themselves. So it's sometimes it can be really difficult, but it's a good period for Ireland as regards, checking in on their resilience, on their defensive setup, on their fitness, all that kind of stuff, mental strength. So you can take a lot out of that as well.
Can we take a moment for Hugo Keenan? I mean, he's become so important in that Irish setup, and his performance was brilliant. He was just on top of everything. His high fielding, try saving at one point in the first half as well. He adds something really comforting. There's just a knowledge of calm when he's in the Irish setup, and he was impervious the weekend.
Superb and so consistent, Shane. I think he's underrated. I think not by the Irish players, but I listened to Will Greenwood yesterday, who's a World Cup winner with England, and obviously if I was debating something with someone, if you were telling me about back rows, I'd back myself to say, well, I could really, really back myself there. He's a back. He's played at the top level. Will Greenwood won a lot. He thinks Hugo Keenan is the best fullback in the world at the moment, and it's, when you think about it, it's hard to argue. And he's so consistent, rarely makes a mistake. He's running game, and he's not this just good in the air and Mr. Reliable, kicking the ball into touch and being really safe defender. His attacking game is superb.
Yeah.
He showed that in New Zealand.
He's so quick.
Yeah, he's really deceptively quick. The cover back when the ball was hacked through for when you think Rio Dyer and Wales are going to score here, they're going to get a present here of a try. He's just never gives up, and there's a real lesson in that. So he's superb, mentally strong, and just does the basics so well, but then excels as when you give him any sort of space. He's a brilliant rugby player and rarely makes a bad decision. And it was a superb performance from him, as was what it was from many of the players. Look, Caelan Doris was, outstanding. James Ryan looks like he's really found his form again. Physically, he looks really strong in himself.
In that first try that we scored, there's pictures doing the rounds of the.
Yeah, it's a still shot. It's.
You can see you can see actually in the live shot that there is it's a hand on the face, but I don't think anything's going to come of it because it's not.
Very unlikely unless James Ryan has a problem with it and Ireland have a problem with it, but I think it's more in trying to reach out and grab the ball, and he was brilliant, James Ryan. I think the line-out steal, the try, the carries, the work rate, he just looks to have a real
explosive
spring.
In a way.
Yeah, he does, and he
physically
probably had a dip in form and was physically a bit battered and played so much rugby in the early parts of his career. He looks re-energised and really strong and physical in the contact areas. Finlay Bealham was a brilliant performance from him. He's going to get tested by Cyril Boy on Saturday in Dublin. It's a bit of a blow to Ireland that Furlong, Gibson Park are not available. But it's a real test for him. I thought he stood up brilliantly and had a really big game. Dan Sheehan again and Van der Fleer, the carries, just it's freakish really, and they keep turning up time after time. They're so fit, it's unbelievable.
Sheehan is getting to the point where we're going to be able to compare him with Keith Wood. Like I've got the ball in my hands, I'm going to try a little chip through, and there's just a bang of
I don't know if Woody, with respect, and he'll probably admit this, could sidestep and swerve. Of course, Woody had a sidestep, yeah, of course. But Woody's carry, Sheehan just can run up to you and stop, and then just bounce to one side, and know you're about to tackle him, and he can kind of fend you a little bit and spin around, and then kind of pump the legs. He's close in contact and balance is really, really powerful.
He's a big man.
He's hard to stop. Now, to be fair, Keith Wood, running a line and his footballing ability was sensational, and Sheehan is getting a real reputation for himself. Everybody knows about him in World Rugby now, and he's, if you can get Kelleher, Sheehan, the two of them are world-class players on their day, and I think they have the ability to be world-class. I think Sheehan now, what we've seen the last year, is kind of nudging more and more there. Ronan Kelleher has been very unfortunate with injury, but
he's got a number of months now. I think he's pretty close to being available as opposed to being longer term. So it's plenty of time for him to get back, and obviously so long as one of them is fit and playing will be grand. But obviously having them both there would be sensational.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. I think it's really important. I think if you had the strength, Herring has done brilliantly for Ireland as well. So there's three of them there that have gives real depth in that position. I think so. There's a lot of positives after the weekend, but I think we need to just temper that with a little bit of how good were Wales. There has to be a reality check there and just speak about that, because and I don't mean it that disrespectfully. Ireland just can't get carried away now, you know what I mean? And I don't think they will. I think we've laboured on the point of 2019 a lot. I think they know that it can change very, very quickly.
This is better.
It's better. It's a good start.
Yeah.
But look, if you get carried away and we all think they're great, they're a very good side. They've proven themselves, so they deserve to be spoken this way, mainly because of New Zealand and November and winning probably not with their best performances in November. So they've been tested a lot, and that's what Andy Farrell wants. He wants them to be tested and challenged. But what we saw again at the weekend was really good.
Let's talk briefly about Italy before we get to France. The narrative around Italy was that they should have a relegation playoff with Georgia every year because they're so bad, it's an abomination. They're conceding 50 points every game. The games aren't competitive. You can put out your second string and it doesn't really matter. And then, like, they were just a few bad decisions away from winning that game at the weekend.
We'll see what happens next week. Of course, they were brilliant. They go to Twickenham now, and they will sense an opportunity here. I think before they beat Wales last year, they'd lost 36 games in the Six Nations, consecutive games. So it was a legitimate argument, Ger. Nobody wanted Italy. Well, I saw someone online yesterday saying, well, people wanted Italy thrown out of the Six Nations. Nobody wanted them thrown out. I think what they wanted was an opportunity for Georgia if they, with a playoff situation. The other unions didn't want that because
for fear they get sucked
if
down.
you had a bad year, a really bad year, you could end up Wales, Ireland, Scotland potentially in a playoff.
Yeah.
With with Georgia away in Tbilisi in a two-legged affair or something, and you could be out of the Six Nations. So that's understandable and changing it up. But there was an argument for, and that argument still should always be there. That if there was a relegation scenario, would it make it more spice to it? Do you know what I mean? Italy were really good on Sunday, and I think they've shown that we've been waiting for this Italian kind of side.
Yeah.
I think they're brilliant to watch. I think they have a problem at halfback. Their halfback, scrum half and out half, didn't help them in that game.
Well, the 10 couldn't kick the ball past the 22. Whenever they'd win possession, they'd snaffle something, and then he'd kick it straight back into touch inside their own 22. And you're like, just, maybe try and find a way of exiting.
Yeah, I think Stephen Varney, the scrum half, made some mistakes as well. Maybe they'll be better in Twickenham. Garbisi wasn't playing, so it was Tommaso Allen, who's pretty experienced, I think, just with some of the control. But
what about France, though? Like, I don't think we can take France's form from this game and say, ooh, France aren't playing really well at the moment, because France are stereotypically complacent when it comes to those games against Italy. Frequently, they'll play Italy.
It can be, and when everything goes well and they start off and they start scoring some great tries, I think they were a little bit surprised at how competitive the Italians were. They couldn't put them away.
Yeah.
Early on, there was a chance maybe to score 3-4 tries and it's game over, and then they just throwing the ball around. They score some incredible tries. That didn't happen. So they, again, deep down, they'll think this was pretty scary for them, but they'll look at it and think it was a test for us. Our backs were to the wall. We weren't playing well. The discipline was really, really poor from them. And that they'll learn a lot from this.
That's the thing on the discipline, Quinny, isn't it? Because you talk about taking the Wales game in context because of how bad Wales were, but if you take France at the weekend in context, conceding 18 penalties from a discipline perspective, that's not going to happen 2 weeks in a row. They're not going to be so ill disciplined.
It's unlikely, but when you're under pressure, you don't know. So Italy put them under a lot of pressure, and a lot of them are split decisions. Some of them are silly ones, and we spoke about Wales's penalty count in the first half, Ireland's in the second half. It doesn't matter how disciplined you are. Sometimes you creak under pressure, and you jump the gun to try and. It's that hindmost foot scenario where you're trying to get off the line to stop. You're getting frustrated with the opposition. They have the ball for lots and lots of phases, and you're defending for a period of time. So if you hold on to the ball, any team holds on to the ball for a long period of time, you're possibly going to get rewarded. And but it's very difficult to see Wales or to see France being that sloppy again, even in their attack. I think the third try they got possibly shouldn't have been a try. I think Gregory Aldred is halfway up the ruck when the ref says the ball is out.
Right.
So they got a little bit fortunate there, but they'll be better in Dublin.
Ireland are 4-point favourites for that, and we'll preview that game later on in the week. And I do want to just sound a slight warning note about Scotland, who for the third time in a row have beaten England.
Yeah.
They're no longer the kind of flaky Scotland that we just took for granted in the last World Cup. We won't be able to take them for granted in this World Cup or in this Six Nations either.
You would never take them for granted on their day anyway, as regards.
There was just a flakeyness about them. We always thought that.
Well, look, they've admitted that
them.
themselves. If you see somebody inconsistencies in the performances over the years, they're unbelievably capable of stringing a performance together, causing you massive problems, making it really difficult, and winning a big game, and then the week after
it's a letdown.
Yeah. So 2 years ago they beat England in Twickenham to win the Calcutta Cup. Again, similar run of fixtures. The following week they played Wales in Murrayfield and they lost the game, and it derailed them. Ireland went there and beat them as well. France beat them. So they ended up starting the competition with unbelievable momentum, excitement. There's similar, obviously same run of fixtures, but they've got to beat Wales on Saturday. They've got to back it up.
In depth now, it feels like that there's more experience.
They've got a bit of steel about them as well. You know, their back row in Jamie Ritchie and Matt Fagerson. I think Fagerson is just 20 plus tackles at the weekend. Everybody talks about Richie Gray's hands for the last try for Duhan van der Merwe's. And watch it back. So Richie Gray puts it through the hands before the English player tackles him. Brilliant hands from the big second row. Fagerson gets the ball then with 20-30 yards to go, and his first reaction and first movement is give it to Van der Merwe really quickly. I really, that jumped out at me because some players would just run 5-10 yards. No, I always had that in my head. The reason that this is a point for me is that I always thought, give it to the quickest fella, tracking the inside, he's going to get a leg tackle and you possibly be there for the inside pass. But what he did was, there's a lesson in that for anyone, for props or hookers or anybody. If you have a winger outside you and you've space in front of you, obviously there's cover coming across, just put it through the hands. Fagerson did that, so Van der Merwe gets it. He now has time to get up speed, and he stepped back inside and scored a brilliant try. The first one was superb as well. That was a brilliant team try.
I presume you've seen the bit on Twitter where there's a nice little bite between the two out halves after the first try, where Finn Russell just is like telling not the out half, sorry,
Owen Farrell,
yeah, like Farrell just took it. Farrell had obviously absolutely emptied them in a tackle a few minutes beforehand.
That was it, Jan. I think there might have been a little reminder back that, you know, what happened there. But England were blunt. So round one, there was some brilliant games. The three great games, I think. Obviously, if you're on the losing side, there weren't three great games, but it was a brilliant weekend, and you know, it'll be intriguing now to see who can kick on and really grab a bit of momentum. If Ireland were to beat France, you're
wide open.
Yeah,
the slow-mo of the Van der Merwe try, I mean, that should be, when you walk into the World Rugby Museum at Twickenham, that should be just on the screens everywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it will be though.
No,
but the way he changed the ball from one hand and was able to fend Dombrandt as well was superb. But yeah, Scotland have a real chance now in this competition, because if they beat Wales next week, obviously in round 3 they're over in Paris, but they'll really feel good about themselves, and
yeah, we've got to be worried about them in the World Cup. Yeah. Like it's not a guaranteed. Oh, we're straight through to the quarterfinals to face.
I've said it so many times. No matter what form Scotland have, when you go to that World Cup, it's going to be a really difficult game.
Yeah, as it stands, though, Six Nations, happy days.
Yeah, it's a really good start. Really good start.
Stick Prendergast in at 10 if Johnny Sexton's injured, that's all. Why not? Let's just see. Right, Quinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
It's 8:33 this morning. If you want to get involved in the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. What is the most likely outcome in the Six Nations? Give us your thoughts on that. We'll talk about it over the course of the rest of the show. Up next, we're talking hurling with Sarah Donovan. The Allianz National Hurling Leagues are back. First, here's Keith Wood and Fiona Hayes talking about the changes in Dan Sheehan's play.
But did his movement and his style of play remind you of anybody on Saturday?
Keith Wood, a young Keith Wood, is it? Look, Who's Casey or
Sheehan? You. No, look.
We've got a whole new species now in Dan Sheehan. Honestly, he's changing the way the game has to go. He is very big, very powerful. His feet, his movement before contact, even before he gets the ball at certain instances, puts him into great. I mean, the game is so totally changed now, and yet he's consistently making yardage. It's very impressive.
Yeah, that's Keith Wood making the somebody else making the comparison for him on our behalf. I definitely think Dan Sheehan is starting to round into someone that we can start beginning to compare with Keith Wood, who was a World Player of the Year, so that's no mean feat. 8:35 this morning. I'm delighted to say Sarah Donovan here with us. Sarah, Cork GAA generally in the green after the performance from the hurlers. I looked at the score at half time and went, oh, this is interesting. Double scores, Limerick just rolling, and then at the end of the game there was real bites, real fights, real quality.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, it's the league. We can't get carried away. But you're a Cork hurling fan. You must be getting a bit carried away.
I was in love with that second half, every aspect of it. Even from the Limerick point of view, both teams went at it. And Patrick Horgan spoke during the week about staying in the fight for as long as they could. And the beauty of it was that they stayed in the fight till the 78th minute. That's what I loved about it.
Well, when you say that during the week, right, and your double scores down at half time, you have to back it up at the weekend.
I agree. At half time, I think they were able to reassess a couple of times last year and in the previous years. Cork have come out of the traps, been excellent. Against Kilkenny a couple of years ago in Croke Park, quarter final of the All-Ireland, they were heads and shoulders above Kilkenny. Kilkenny came out in the second half and destroyed them, right? Last year again against Galway, started really well, fell apart. So this time around, to see them go down and be able to come back, I'd rather...
Yeah, you want to be at the end.
I'd rather have them that way, yeah.
Better to be a second half team than the first half team.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the big things in the second half for me, laid on Conor O'Callaghan, cornerback, and Kieran Joyce, centre back, and they're smothering Cian Lynch, right? Cian Lynch has nowhere to go. Love to see that. Jack Callahan thumps Darragh Donovan out over the sideline. They win the short sideline cut. Shane Kingston gets the score. They're the inches that Cork were winning the last night, and I love that.
We had a big conversation, philosophical conversation about the importance of the league on Friday night, and I think last year's league probably ruined the league for everybody, because at the end of it we're like, oh, Waterford are really good, and then they completely fell apart. But that's not guaranteed. A good league doesn't mean that you're going to be bad in the championship, right? Like Davey is in the papers talking about he wants competitive matches for his side at this stage, and he said Micheál O'Donoghue likewise. Everybody's trying to find something in the league that they're going to be able to cling to and use as inspiration or form or partnerships. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that some of this will actually matter at the end of the year. We'll be able to look back and go, that mattered, or these players came through. Like Limerick have trimmed their panel. That matters, you know. Decisions are being made by the management teams that will be the basis for what at the end of the year they look back and go, we set down patterns of behaviour, we set down the culture at this point, and the good teams will be able to carry that through. Yeah, but there's things that I saw on Saturday night that immediately I went, oh, that's different to last year. So Padraig Walsh, centre back for Kilkenny, Cody had all but retired him, like, you know, and now Derek Lyng sees him as an option at centre back because obviously he's great at holding structure. Luke Meade for Cork, incredible performance Saturday night. Kingston had relegated him to the sideline for most of last year's championship. Pat Ryan's decided he's got something to offer. Declan Dalton was sitting 2 seats in front of me last year for the Galway game. Cork had no interest in him, and he scores, you know, crucial goal for Cork Saturday night. New managers, massive freshness. Loved Adam English the last night for Limerick. Really thought Conor Coughlin's performance for Limerick, real standout performance, making really good decisions late on in the game. Barry Murphy for Limerick the last day, thought he was really good. In the Dublin setup, a West Cork man playing midfield for Dublin. Chris O'Leary from my own parish in Shannon. Those things, that's what the league does. It highlights these players, and that's what you're talking about. And if you can build confidence, if you give the manager confidence that you can perform now, they'll back you to still be in the team. And then look, we know it's a bit of a different sport when the weather's good versus now at the moment, and the pitches are very heavy. But at the same time, like, that's why this stuff matters. Yeah, well, if you look at Conor Lehan, it took him 76 minutes to score in the game Saturday night. What a touch, what a score to level the game. You know, that's why he's still on the field. That's why Pat Ryan still has him on the field, because he has that composure. That's the kind of thing that matters come
April or May.
There's a bit of a championship feel as well. I don't know if it's the attendances or the fact that these games are Saturday nights under lights, but there's something different down the home stretch. It feels like there's a lot on the line. I know it's only a league game, but But
is it only a league?
Well, it's not only.
It's a career, though. It's a player's career.
True, and there's it was even gamesmanship at half time. Limerick, I think, took a significant amount of time to come out of the dressing room, and Cork standing there waiting for the second half start. Backfired a little bit because Cork were brilliant in that second half, as you say. But there was just an extra special feel about those games, especially on Saturday night.
I think because of the social media now and the increased exposure that players have, every game is important to them. That's why the league has become as important as the championship, because, as I said, players are building their reputation week on week on week, and that's why every player is looking to play his best, regardless of the nature of the game. Even the Munster League had a bit of bite.
I kind of feel as well like we haven't quite settled into the new routine of the league and then the round robin happening really quick after it, and then the championship, exploding after that. Like last year was the first year of it, so people didn't really know what to do, and now it was the first proper year of it post-COVID. And now I think most managers will have their entire periodisation mapped out, and that there's a possibility that some team comes and has a great league and just rides that momentum all the way through to All-Ireland quarterfinals, semi-finals, and look, then it's a different ball game. But I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see a team who we don't expect to make the semi-finals this year make it on the back of a good league.
I agree. I think, though, what the managers are looking for this year is depth, because if you look at what happened to Wexford against Clare in last year's championship, they were in it, had a couple of injuries, Roy O'Connor had to go off, they didn't have the players to come on, and I think the managers this year are very conscious that they need to find 3 or 4 players who can make the difference in a championship setting if you have those injuries, because the games come so quickly.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is there's no real jeopardy if you're a top tier team. It doesn't really matter if you're in the first tier or the second tier. There's no chance of you properly being relegated to meaningless, and there's loads of competition in these games, so you can take risks with certain players, and we'd always talk about the rugby players or the footballers. Like the rugby players, it's impossible to see if you make too many changes how good these players are going to be. Whereas if you pick the core of your team and then add in 3 or 4, at least they're playing with top quality inter-county players as opposed to it being Walsh Cup teams. And
that's what the managers are trying to do, is to try and allow these new players to come in and have that experience, because if you get a quality ball, that can give you a chance to have a quality score. If you look at Cian O'Sullivan's goal the last day for Dublin, like, what I was really impressed about with Dublin was their technical skills seem to have come on massively, like in massive catches. Just and Owen O'Donnell and that full back, lads, what a warrior. If there was a transfer market, he'd be the lad that I'd be looking to get into Cork. I think he's a phenomenal hurler. But that's what I was excited about at the weekend, is just the improvement in the players. And when you saw with Davy Fitz, he's like, right, I need to do something here. He brings in Desi Hutchinson, he brings in Ozzie Gleeson. Dublin were a bit naive. They thought Ozzie Gleeson was going to go for that late score to level the game, and he decides to go for a goal with Mikey Kiley. That's the beauty of the league, is Ozzie was willing to try that.
What do you think is the ceiling for this Waterford team at the moment? Like, are they straight away All-Ireland contenders because of the quality of... Because this time last year we were saying they're absolutely All-Ireland contenders. They're coming off the back of a deep run. Now, they've never had a deep run when there's been they have had it with the round robin, but it's been a long time. Is there a possibility that Davy can immediately make them a team who's going to be strong enough, deep enough to get out of the round robin and still be standing in All-Ireland quarter-final weekend?
I think it's a discipline thing with that group. It showed on Saturday. They were fiery. They made a couple of decisions which resulted in them going down to 13 men. We've seen that a couple of times last year. Discipline with Ozzie Gleeson, an incredible hurler, but you need to have him on the pitch. So Davy has to work on the discipline aspect as much as their hurling, but there's no doubt Jamie Barron, Jack Prendergast, Desi Hutchinson, the pace that team has, the way they play, the pace which they play at, really, really hard to combat that.
So are they all Ireland contenders?
If you look at the game between Wexford and Galway, I would have said Waterford look like they're ahead of both of those teams. So Galway got to an All-Ireland semi-final last year, pushed Limerick all the way. Waterford came up too early, we'll say. I would put Waterford ahead of Galway.
I know both of those teams, Wexford and Galway, were missing. Like, Galway were missing the St Thomas's contingent and the Cooney brothers as well. But Wexford were also missing players. But, I mean, if you're a Wexford fan, given the amount of wides, and I think they only scored twice from play in the second half, you'd be really concerned of those two teams to be a Wexford supporter at the moment, because they did look fairly abject.
It wasn't the shooting, and everyone was going on about the shooting. They had 43% shooting conversion in the first half. My issue was their structure. They couldn't maintain their structure, so you couldn't tell who was playing midfield and who was playing half back. That's my issue with some of the teams at the minute. Is you saw in the first half Cork and Limerick, there were so many gaps. Cork couldn't figure out. Limerick were defending together, attacking together, pushing forward and coming back. Cork had to really figure out their structure to be able to close the gaps. Wexford couldn't do that. Dublin did that really well against Waterford. They held their structure really well, and that's what I was impressed about with Michael O'Donoghue. Obviously he's gone in and said, first things first, let's figure out how we close the gaps.
I thought last year in the league Dublin were great for a period and then had a really tricky game against Kilkenny and never seemed quite to recover the confidence from that over the course of the rest of the season. And again, that's one of the other reasons why if you take a shellacking on a day where you expect to do well, it can damage and derail the rest of your season. It feels like Micheál Donoghue has enough nous and experience, like he's a serious fella, that I don't know, you'd love to see Dublin being proper contenders and Micheál Donoghue's hurling brain being the one that gets them there.
Well, look, I saw an Instagram post last week, Liam Rush, David Tracy and Chris Crummy out in Byron Bay, right? Micheál Donoghue probably took on the job and didn't expect to lose such quality. So for him to turn around on Saturday and get a draw against Waterford with players like Cian Boland, Alex Considine, Cian O'Sullivan, Chris O'Leary, the aforementioned Cork man, Owen O'Donnell, there was some massive performances there, and these guys are only going to get better, you know, and they don't have that stigma of the last number of years.
Okay, so Limerick obviously don't care what happens in this league, right? Because we know that they're an all-time great team and they have all-time great talent, and we'll see exactly who is in their championship panel when it's named for the first proper Munster Championship match. But after that, who's feeling confident and who's feeling good about life?
I would say, realistically, Cork on the basis of Saturday night and beating Tip in the Munster League the way they did. Tip put up 232 at the weekend. I know we aren't necessarily going to cover it, but 232 is a big score. Clare hit 427 at the weekend. Every team is motoring in the right direction. April 30th is Cork's first game against Waterford. I would say there's 6 teams in contention right now.
See, that's not very far away at all, is it? Like that's why
9 weeks.
Yeah, that's why I do wonder if it's that easy to like, oh, it's just the league, and you know, I think I don't know, we'll see.
I think crucially here, lads, is before Christmas we were watching all the club games, right? And we had kind of 4 months of club, and now the league started. The pace of it by comparison to the club, it's like a feast. I was so excited at the weekend,
and I think that's why the numbers of people going to matches is so big. Even though it's like, but I think I don't know,
quality, the contrast in quality, and that's no disrespect to the clubs. It's just you're seeing professional versus club setup.
Is the style of play with Kilkenny under Ling carry on from Cody, or is it entirely different?
Looking at it on Saturday, it was hard to tell. Like Antrim had a really good structure. That's why they only lost by 7. You know, they worked really hard to close the gaps. So it'll be interesting to see how Kilkenny get on this weekend. I think they're playing on Sunday.
All right, Sarah, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. That's Sarah Donovan giving us some thoughts on the hurling from the weekend. If you've got views on that, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can tweet us at Off The Ball AM. We're going to hear from Pat Nevin, who was on the show last night talking about Jesse Marsch's departure from Leeds. After that, Martin Lipton is on to talk Manchester City.
Where do they go next after sacking Jesse Marsch?
Well, first thing is, I'm the worst person to ask, right? Because I've been to see Leeds about 4 times this season, and they've been utterly brilliant every time, and they've won every game. Even I was down at the Accrington Stanley game, and you know, it's not the Accrington Stanley, but yeah, I saw them wipe the floor with Chelsea. Every team I've seen in London, brilliant. It's a tough one. I agree with you. I think it's harsh in Marsch, because you look at the teams that I've looked at them before. Arsenal beat them 1-0. Fulham, they're doing well, 3-2, single goal, usual stuff. Newcastle, flying high, draw. Brentford, flying high, draw. No one really hammers them. It's just the odd goal. And what it does tell you is one simple thing. The difference between success and failure in the Premier League is stunningly small. You wouldn't be surprised had they stuck by him a wee bit more and they might have got out of it and cruised along to mid-table. I wouldn't have been surprised with that, because They've got some very good players in there, and they all clearly liked working for the manager. But where do they go now? That's the question. That's a hard one, because you could see the transition from Bielsa to Jesse Marsch. What do they do now? Do they get another sort of similar-ish attitude of, high intensity, ultra attacking, or do they go to somebody who's a, hired hand, gun for hire, somebody who does normal things and just keeps them in the division? They may well do that. I have to say, I think that's a tricky one. I don't know if they're the right team to do that with. So, if it would be me, oddly enough, and I know a lot of Leeds fans don't think about it, two things I would have done. I probably would have stuck with them, and B, I would have got me a season ticket there, because I think that would have saved them.
You're clearly the good.
Leeds secondary manager is not the biggest story in the Premier League today. The biggest story in the Premier League today is that Manchester City have been hit with 115 financial fair play charges. I'm delighted to say Martin Lipton is with us to talk to us about this. Martin, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, I'm well. I think you'll probably get more sense out of Pat Nevin than you will from me, but nevertheless, I'll do my best.
I don't know. Your back page story on The Sun this morning is boot them out. Prem rivals want champs relegated for cash tricks. The trouble here for Manchester City is that they might be able to take on the Premier League with their lawyers, but all of a sudden, all of the other clubs in the Premier League now have grounds for cases against Manchester City, and so they might have some victories along the way in terms of the 115 that might get reduced. But at some point, surely the rest of the Premier League are looking at this and going, hang on a second, what's the point of rules if somebody's allowed to break them?
I think you've got to be difficult and diverse, because actually, bizarrely as it sounds, under Premier League rules, a third-party club cannot appeal or complain about a decision made by a Premier League panel. Only the clubs involved can. So they would have to go to law, literally try and make a high court suit for damages. Now, that's very hard to sustain. However, that will be different depending on the punishment. So let's have a look at the totality here. City face 115 separate allegations of breaches of the regulations, which they absolutely deny emphatically, totally, utterly, completely. We did nothing wrong, Gov. It's a conspiracy. Don't look at us. Look over there. That's their right to so do. The obvious punishment would be a fine if they're found guilty of these. But that won't be enough, I don't think, for anybody, given the scale of the alleged breaches over 10 years. And then I think more damagingly for City, 4 years of obstruction of the inquiry, which is what they have been charged with. The last 5 charges are season by season not giving full information to the Premier League. So a fine would probably be seen as insufficient. So the next step up would be a transfer embargo. That would be possible. Difficult to sustain because there's a question there of whether they have the legitimacy to do that, but that's the Premier League. They can do as they see fit. This panel has any punishment at its disposal. Next up, points deduction. If you deduct points over multitude of seasons, that's a real problem, actually. If you say for each season when offences took place, that's every season from 2008-9, we're going to deduct 3 points. In 8 of those seasons, Manchester City lose a place. In 4 of them, they lose the title. And in 1 of them, they lose a Champions League place. All the clubs that have been displaced could then theoretically sue City or the Premier League if they didn't order City to pay a compensation payment. So if you're Man United, we would have been more marketable in 2013, 2012 if we won the title. So where's our, you owe us for that. And in 2015-16, we lost £40 million when we would have finished above you in 4th place in the title race and therefore gone into the Champions League. That's a real nest of vipers for the Premier League. So in many ways, it would be simpler for there to be one punishment of relegation / expulsion for next season or the season after.
That seems like a bombshell in a way. If you're Man City, I guess you say, okay, we'll pay 40 million compensation to Manchester United. Not going to give Liverpool the title the time that they might have won it. Not going to give Man United the title. I don't know. What do you do if you're City in this instance, assuming that they get found guilty, right? Let's just
but they could be cleared.
Yeah,
let's they won their case against UEFA, albeit they won. The main reason they beat UEFA is because UEFA actually laid the charges too late. They were after the time barrier. There is no time bar for Premier League charges. Interestingly, City are saying that's really good for us. We're really pleased that there's no time bar, because it means we can be completely cleared and exonerated, and this is the end of this. I would like to buy that if they hadn't used the time bar as their main defence against UEFA, but there you go.
Very interesting situation. All the lawyers are going to get very rich out of this on all of the sides, because I'm sure all the clubs are looking at to see exactly what they might be due if City were to be found guilty. But so there's two outcomes really. There's a bunch of other outcomes that are possible, but the main ones are City get found innocent, City get found guilty. If they do get found guilty, would it be in their interest to take relegation for one season and think, well, we'll come back automatically, just keep everybody for that one season, take whatever the costs are, take your parachute payments? Do you get your parachute payments if you've been kicked out? How does that all work?
I think you would get parachute payments. That's 40 million. Think about this. If City are relegated for one season, that means they're not in Europe for 3 seasons. Because they wouldn't be in Europe the season after they were relegated. They wouldn't be in the Champions League the season after that because they wouldn't be able to qualify for it. So it would be 3 seasons before they could qualify for Europe. TV income from a decent season in the Champions League, plus City finishing top 4 every year, around £270 million. So in season 1, they get 50 million from TV money. There's a 220 million black hole. Season 2, the maximum they get is 140 million because they're not in Europe. So that's another 130 million black hole. You've suddenly lost an awful lot of money. And even the season, if they qualify, they have to then sell players to meet the salary demands. A lot of them will go anyhow. Yeah. Are you going to tell Erling Haaland that no, you're not going to be playing PSG next season. You're playing Hull City away on a Wednesday night, 46-game season. Are you going to tell Kevin De Bruyne, sorry, mate, Cardiff next Tuesday? Are you going to tell Ederson, I know you came here to play against Liverpool and United, but for the next 12 months, it's going to be a bit different. We've got Huddersfield. Fancy that, don't you? It's just not viable, is it? They're not going to stay. The players will leave. They'll be able to buy players. They'll have a huge sum of money. But a lot of these players are on long-term contracts. They'll lose money on them. They'll lose money. So their FFP position gets worse because they haven't got the income stream for 3 years. The players they sell, because they're a distressed seller, will go for less than they should do. Many of them are on long contracts with them. Even if those fees have been amortised, you've still got to pay off the overhang of the amortisation before you can start to bank the sales. It's a real issue.
So they will fight that then, obviously. I mean, we know
they would fight a 50p fine. And they've every right to. Let's be honest, they've every right to. But they would fight a 50p fine. That's Manchester City.
When I first saw the charges over the weekend, Martin, immediately you think, well, because of the Court of Arbitration for Sport decision a couple of years ago, it's going to be the same outcome. But then, as you say, you talk about the fact that there's no time bar in this one. They found more evidence as well, and they have more evidence than the previous incident a couple of years ago. It feels different, this one. It feels like a more weighted argument against City.
I think what will prove to be potentially the most serious charges are the last 5 charges. The obstruction of the inquiry charge. If you go back to Carlos Tevez in 2006, the reason that they should, according to the Commission, have been given a penalty, a points deduction, and they weren't for different reasons, but the reason that they should have been given a points deduction wasn't the offence of Tevez, it was the lies Scott Duxbury and others at West Ham, no longer at West Ham, let's point that out, told to the Premier League, directly to Richard Scudamore. That was seen as the most egregious situation. Now, the allegation here is that over 5 consecutive seasons, including this season, Manchester City have deliberately attempted to obstruct and deflect and prevent a full and proper inquiry. That's quite serious, and that is where they could be in significant trouble, I think. If they just fessed up and said, yeah, we did, fine, and a small points deduction might have been the most likely scenario. At this stage, I genuinely don't know what will happen, because nobody does. It's entirely in the hands of the 3-person committee to be perhaps headed by Murray Rosen QC, certainly selected by him. He's the head of the chair of the judicial panel. Nobody knows what they'll do. The Premier League have no idea. The Premier League have no say in this outcome. These are 3 independent people, one of whom must be, the chair must be a senior lawyer. City have actually the right to complain and to argue against the inclusion of any members of that panel if they feel they have vested interests. So they can't claim that they didn't have a fair hearing. It's going to be really, really fascinating. And it will be entirely at the decision and behest of this panel what happens next. The Premier League can ask for certain punishment, but they can't impose it. All their Premier League will do is impose the punishment that is set by the Commission.
What do you make of the timing of all this, Martin? Because you look, we're just coming out of a transfer window where the Premier League have received a lot of flack and criticism across Europe for the amount of spending. I think Chelsea outspent every other team in Europe's top 5 leagues put together. £815 million sterling spent by all the clubs in the Premier League. Like, is it a response to criticism, to be seen to be getting ahead of issues like this and dealing with financial irregularities or alleged financial irregularities?
No, because the Premier League is utterly proud of what it is. There's no one at the Premier League who thinks that the spending of the Premier League is a mark of shame. They think it's a mark of strength. They love the fact that Premier League is becoming the go-to destination in world football, that it's the only league that has emerged full bore from the pandemic. It's a genuine source of pride to the Premier League that basically we run our business so well. We are so popular globally, and we are so strong reputationally that everyone wants to come here, and we are number one without question. In fact, we're so far number one that we can't even see number 2 in our back, out of our back rearview mirror. That's how, and they're genuinely, innately, inordinately, but understandably, I think, proud of what they've achieved. This is nothing to do with that at all. This is an ongoing investigation which began in December 18 and has finally come to a position where the board, and that's Richard Masters and his colleagues, agreed that there was sufficient evidence that a charge should be laid.
It's so serious that you feel like it has the possibility to impact the team's performances over the rest of the season, because as you make the point, like, if relegation is a possibility, the vast majority of those players will not play in the Championship, and they will talk about this, like in the WhatsApp groups, in the City first team, in the little cliques, they're all chatting about, well, what are you going to do if we get relegated? Well, I've already talked to my agent and I've got 4 clauses that are going to allow it. So, like, this, it's such a big story, it's difficult to overstate.
Look, we don't know what the impact will be. City didn't seem to be terribly adversely affected by the Champions League ban, in that their season was, it was in the February of 2020, and they that season, let's be honest, was already gone because Liverpool won the league. It was done and dusted before the chaos of COVID. So City still played. They just weren't as good that season. It didn't stop them going deep in the Champions League, and they'd already gone deep in the Champions League. They were into the quarterfinals effectively after the ban, but before the ban was overturned. But this is different in scale because of the sheer number of charges. I'm sure the City players have been, will be, and continue to be told, do not worry, this is all a put-up job. We've got nothing to fear. We told you before, look, we were right. We're telling you now, we'll be right. And guess what? City may be correct in that. They may well be correct in that. Let's put it this way. They've got the best lawyers on the planet. They can afford to hire the best lawyers there are. They will work absolutely hammer and tong to ensure that their case is victorious. But you're right, it will, you would have thought, have a detrimental impact. The question is how detrimental an impact. If you're a City player now and you think the best scenario is that we're going to be deducted points, because those players will know, some of them, that if they had a second contract in breach of league regulations. There are players at the club in the squad now who will know if these charges about the contracts that they had are correct. If they're correct, and I do not know, if they are correct and they know that, they'll tell the other players that. And they'll know, actually, well, there's something in this. Oh, right. You would have thought, with the possibility of losing even, 15 points, whatever it might be this season, do they really want to care about beating Arsenal twice? Or do they say, we now go and win every single point, so that when and if they take points off us, everyone knows we were the real champions. We were the team that really won the Champions League, etc. It could work the other way.
The scriptwriters for this season are working overtime. What was already a brilliant, interesting title race at the top, and the relegation and sack race at the bottom has suddenly been, catapulted into all-time great storytelling. It's incredible that this has happened at this stage of the season, that the story has come out, that the legal documents were delivered the way they were, and that now we all know chapter and verse and the details as well. It's I don't know what's going to happen.
We did know the detail. We know some of the details. You don't know all of them. That's the issue. And the one thing that's a real shame is that this hearing will be held in private, although the chairman of the panel has the right to determine that it is taken down verbatim and published. And I truly, truly hope that happens, given that we're not allowed in. I suspect what we'll get is a summary rather than a full hearing transcript, but I'd love to get a transcript.
Last thing, what's the time frame here? When do you think we actually might know the makeup of the judiciary panel, and how long it will take to hear the case?
Well, the makeup of the panel should be quite easy. Murray Rosen just chooses 3 from the list he's got. He could do that within the next 17 days. City have got, this is going to sound ridiculous, City were charged yesterday. They would have got the email. They've read it on the website, but legally they haven't received the letter until Thursday, informing them of their charge, because it has to be sent by registered mail. Don't ask me why, but it does. So they don't get it, even though they got it, until Thursday. They then have 2 weeks, which takes us to the 23rd of February to respond, after which the Premier League has another 2 weeks to respond. In that period, the panel should be selected. So that gives you March 9. Theoretically, it could be any time from then. Certainly by the end of March. And if you want it to be concluded by early summer, which is benefits of clarity for everyone, you probably want to hold this hearing by early April to get a result by, within a couple of days, and then start the appeal process, which would initially be an appeal to another panel by whichever party wanted to so do.
Right.
However, it could drag on for months. It all depends on lawyers agreeing when they should hold the hearing. And if you're City's lawyer, you will say, well, we need more time to defend ourselves, and we haven't had this paper, and we've not had that paper, and we've been delayed on this, and they will drag. It will make sense for them to drag it as far as they can. And if it goes into next season, then it adds more layers of problems, because were there then to be an eventual decision of a relegation, what does a team that comes 18th this season do?
Takes a case.
When they wouldn't have been relegated this season, if the punishment had been imposed then. It's a real problem.
Yeah. Martin, great stuff. Thanks a million for making the time for us this morning. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. It's Martin Lipton there from The Sun, giving us the latest on the situation at Manchester City. 8 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on Sports Radio for you today. Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali at 1 o'clock. Our Dadcast at 3. Gavin James is in the Culture Hall of Fame, and Ronnie Delaney is OTB Gold at 6. And Joe is back tonight from 7 with the rest of the team on Off the Ball on Newstalk. Up after the break, Anthony Moyles talking Gaelic football.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Troy Parrott obviously injured the hamstring in the process of scoring.
He's got no pace, I'm afraid. He's a nice footballer. He hasn't scored many goals, as we know, as well. But he's at that level, I don't know where he'll end up. He's obviously only on loan at Preston. He'll go back to Tottenham. But he certainly will not get anywhere near Tottenham's team, I'm afraid.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, gents. How are we all?
Me, they're back. Didn't take much.
Yeah. You're a week late for me, they're back, Ger.
Oh, they're properly back. You do it once, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Prove it to me. They've done it now. It's like...
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't at the game. I watched it back. Yeah, they've improved. I think they have improved. Obviously, I think they've scored 7 goals now in 2 outings. So there's a definite pattern you can see whereby the players are taking their men on in the forward line. There was different goals this week. You know, I think Clare would be kicking themselves because it was the concession of 3 goals that probably were soft enough. One was a long ball in which Donald Lennon kind of got a flick on. Another one was just a kick out mistake, and then the other one was a kind of a scrambled goal really from a ball that should have been shepherded out inside. So Clare will kick themselves. Meath are happy, obviously getting goals. I think there's a bit more. You know, with the fellas involved, Barry Callahan and Stephen Bray, I'm not surprised that the forwards are taking their men on. Brayer's MO was always to stand you up as a defender and go at you, you know, left or right. So I'm a big fan of that, because I think this idea of, I think we've watched football and we're still seeing it with teams, and I know we've spoken about this in the past, where they're not really taking risk, you know, and the ball goes into the inside man, and even when the opportunity is to stand up and go to the defender, he's looking to recycle it back out, you know, and you're never going to get goals that way.
Well, it's going to finish 9-8, and
exactly,
you know, and you might lose, you might win, but you're not really influencing that.
Correct, and you'll hold on to the ball and you'll shepherd it back, you know, you'll kind of pass it back out and you'll play it across the 30-metre line, and you just, you know, you eventually someone will take a shot, or you'll engineer a kind of a 2-on-1 or a fella coming off the shoulder. But to really get that, you know, 1-on-1 situation, the ball obviously has to travel in fast, and then you have to have a forward who's willing to take on his man, and that is a skill. It's a skill that was kind of forgotten about probably the last 6 or 7 years, but it's coming back in, and I'm glad to see that they're doing it. I'm a bit worried about their defence. You know, they've conceded a lot of scores. They've been outscored in both games, so, you know, I think whatever it was 16 points Clare racked up, and a similar enough 19 against Cork, which could have been 122 or 123.
Turns out Cork are really good though.
Well, it does, yeah, and it's, you know, that was a surprise. I actually, you know what, I'm not just saying it, I kind of did fancy Cork, because I looked closely at the Meath game. They could have easily won that Meath game if they had got the goals at certain times when Meath didn't get, you know, Meath got them. It could have swung easily for Cork, and you could even hear Kerrigan after the game. He was very, very disappointed. You know, you could see the disappointment in them. I'm surprised by Kildare though, you know, because I thought Kildare, after running Dublin so close, I knew they were massively disappointed in not getting something out of that game, but they obviously just, I don't know if they took a big hard week of training. I know you can't really say that, and of course it's impossible to know, but Jesus, they were flat. They were absolutely flat, you know, and at home, which I saw some people saying, Newbridge doesn't suit the Kildare team, but like, you know,
it does. That's not an excuse. Yeah, so they'll be definitely very worried about that, because Division 2 in the league is a bear pit, and you know, all of a sudden you're going to need to perform in the Leinster Championship, and it's not going to, you know, if you haven't performed in the league, you're not going to suddenly switch it on and qualify for Sam Maguire that way. So you're staring down the barrel of the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, you are. And you know, I kind of looked at the teams in Division 2 and Division 1, and you're kind of going, wow, there's 3 or 4 teams in Division 2 that are probably playing better football than some of the teams in Division 1 at this stage. You know, and there's that you can't really say that for the last number of years. There was always a gap in Division 1 and Division 2, maybe 1 or 2, but you know, I hate to say it, Shane, but Monaghan looking serious bother for me. I know people are talking and people are kind of bigging up the new man from Kerry, and you know, he's definitely needed. But I just felt that some of the Monaghan defending was atrocious, and I'm not even talking about the Paddy Clifford goal, because I think some of the lads they couldn't really do anything about it. But at the same time, both of them could have had a chance to jump on his toe and block the ball right at the end. And I'm just worried. I'd be worried about Monaghan. I don't think Donegal are in great shakes. And, you know, Galway without Comer are a completely different outfit. You know, they need obviously Walsh back ASAP, but you know, so there's a couple of teams there that you would be slightly worried about, and then you've got other teams obviously like Roscommon who are coming to the fore.
Yeah, we should talk about Roscommon, because obviously they ended up beating Galway, coming from behind, kicked the last 4 points. I think bit of controversy about the refereeing at the end, but I think it's too early for us to care about refereeing controversies, really.
Yeah,
you're seeing teams,
lots of them.
Exactly. And you're seeing teams play and put stuff down, and Roscommon have put back-to-back games down. League's very important for them, but there's an opportunity for them too to you know, just become one of those teams who we talk about as being capable of winning a big championship match in Croker in a quarter-final or semi-final.
Definitely, because they've had the forwards the last number of years, so that hasn't been a problem. Defence-wise, and I said last week, midfield-wise, so certainly defence, I just think they leaked a lot. They kind of have an idea, well, you score, we'll score. They have the forwards, like Merton and these guys are fantastic forwards, and they're well able to, but I think under Burke they're much more organised. They're playing without a fear, you know, they're just going for it. They have wing backs who are well capable of coming up the field and taking scores, but they're also tightening up at the far end, and they're becoming a bit meaner. They're becoming a bit more physical, you know, they're becoming a bit more street smart, I would put it, you know.
You mentioned, Anthony, the Clare conceding the goal from the short kick out. Like even last week in the opening round, Donegal gave Kerry a goal in similar circumstances. Rory Began had a mistake that gave Armagh a goal. There was another one at the weekend as well. I can't remember which game, but constantly Armagh, Killian O'Connor nearly scored a goal from an Armagh kick out.
Yeah.
Is it happening more regular? It feels like it's the first two rounds of the league. There have been so many goals from goalkeeping mistakes or from bad kickouts. Maybe teams are just pushing up more on kickouts, and it's becoming a new trend.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen because there is that risk reward, and you know, stats guys I'm sure are looking at, well, the amount of times we actually kick long and it breaks versus the amount of times we kick short and retain possession, and how much do we score versus, you know, one versus the other. And I know people have been given out about fly goalkeepers, and there's no kind of more a fella who pronounces it as more than Ethan Rafferty with obviously with Armagh. But I watched that game closely, and I think what you lose on one side, you gain on something else with a fella like him who's well able to come forward and set up scores and get involved and win kickouts and everything on the far side. So I think where you can get caught between two stools there, Shane, is if you're doing the short kick out and you're also being a bit of a, but you're not willing to take the risk, because he takes an inordinate amount of risk, but it's obviously it's calculated risk by McGeaney, because he realises that actually, you know, when we bring him in, when things are slowing down, he is that extra player coming from deep, and he has such ball skills. He obviously played midfield for donkey's years, so he's able to handle the ball, but it's still a risk. But you know, the short kick out, I think sometimes keepers, they see a kick out and they want to go there, and they look away, but they still want to go back to that kick out. And if you have the high press on, and if you're smart enough, obviously you can pick them off. And of course, once you pick them off, it's goal time. There's still a lot to be said about just putting your foot through it, you know, in those situations. But you know, like, I mean, look, someone you know, obviously doing the stats, as I said, will be able to point things out. And the concession of a goal, yes, it can be a right kick in the teeth, but it can't be abandoned, because at the end of the day, if you are getting a short kick out away, you know, you regain a possession, which is obviously massive for you.
I know you're talking about the Monaghan defence, but Kerry supporters are very, very excited about Donald Down O'Sullivan, the latest in the procession of glorious forwards.
Yeah.
It's going to be tricky to get into that team, but he might be good enough to do it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna join the hype train just yet, because I heard it. I was kind of going, okay, 1-3. He got the goal. I thought was
soft goal as well.
Yeah, it was soft goal. It was like a bit. To be fair, I think it was Roach or else Brosnan who actually did a lot of good work for hand passed the ball across to him. If you watch some of the defending for some of the scores, it wasn't a Monaghan player within 10 yards of him. So he will have tougher battles, is what I'm saying, right? So then he has to prove himself against it. And he's now marked. Like, I'm coming into the next match as a cornerback. I don't know who they play next, and I'm thinking, right, I'm putting an X on this guy. Yeah. So how does he handle that, I suppose? But yes, I've thought about it. Like, Kerry will definitely have to unearth one, if not two. Okay, you got your Shawnee O'Shea, you have your two Cliffords, and I love the way they played Clifford last week. He played in a much more kind of withdrawn role. He was actually nearly acting as a double six, so he was a bit more he was deeper than he normally would be when he's playing that tricky kind of 11 role. And he's such a class player for Kerry. Like, I honestly think he's their best, because he's the one guy that as soon as he gets the ball, his head is up and he's looking to pass it rather than trying to work something out for himself. Obviously the brother inside, it's always about execution, and even Shawnee O'Shea to a large degree, whereas Paddy is always constantly looking at where's the right pass, where do I need to go with this, and his ability just to do small simple things, as I said, he's vital for them. I think Guinea will struggle. I think, different players who come back. Spillane, even though when he came on, again, some chances you go, that should have went over. Yeah. You need to score those. You need to get yourself 5 or 6 points here. So I definitely think that Roach gives them something different. I think he gives them a much more physical presence in that full forward line. So where there's it's a bit of a physical battle inside there, and you want to protect David as much as possible, right, from going into that fit. You could fire him in because he's well able to take it. He's big and strong, and as I said, he gives you that different thing of a ball winning ability inside. But no, O'Sullivan will be fine. I think he has tougher battles to go, and I think like my worry about Monaghan, they are very young, and you can see it, and he's trying to blood new fellas, and he will get guys back. But I just saw some worrying signs in it of fellas just throwing in the towel, chasing back guys, and they're going to have to do a really tough video session this week because they'll be skating out of Division 1 fairly sharp.
It's unforced errors as well. I know that, like, Conor McManus isn't there, Jack McCarran was injured last week, they have the two Hughes brothers to come back in as well, but that's not really you still have to be playing better than it was just handing the ball to Kerry on different occasions, which is worrying. You just can't see that at Division 1 level. Like when you're talking about unearthing new players, that's maybe an advantage for Kerry. Having so many injuries has maybe allowed other players to kind of come in and.
Well, you could see the response from last week, because if you watch it back, they turned Monaghan over. In Monaghan's forward line on umpteen occasions, and it wasn't just one hand in. Next thing, there was another Kerry man over, and you could see the Monaghan lads getting hit from all angles. And Spillane was back there, Barry was back there. There was tackles going in, and good physical tackles, not stupid tackles with your hand in, but just putting a hand on someone, getting the ball down, someone else diving on the ball, and they showed a real desire. Like Brosnan was back in his own defence. I don't know how many. And I wouldn't say that is his game, but he was back there. You're
not going to play though if you don't do it. It's
absolutely.
You'd often see Paul Mannion back left corner back defending, and then up the
correct.
The pitch.
So
that's what they're developing.
Correct.
One last thing, and we don't have time to get into it, but we might talk about it over the course of the rest of the league campaign. Paddy Kelly has been speaking to the Examiner about this is the Cork All-Ireland winner, talking about Cork's style of play. The one thing I'd be critical of, I thought it was very one-dimensional. It's very much a running game, very little looking up to kick and to move the ball through the lines quickly. And then he goes on to say, I was at a lot of Cork versus Kerry minor and under 20 games for the last 5 or 6 years with TG Carr. It's an obvious thing in Cork football. We've beaten Kerry and often been the better team, but it's a running style, whereas you see Kerry even losing minor and under 20s, it's always kicking out from defence down the channel 20 or 30 yard passes. I had basically the same conversation with somebody who's been involved with underage teams in Kildare recently, and he was just saying our style of play is still the running game, and it's been outstripped by the best teams who are looking to kick the ball long. And you saw Porrick Joyce come in, took him a long time to get there, but eventually they were like, we're a kicking team. The only one who's allowed to run with it is Shane Walsh because he's a genius. And but I think stylistically there are these trends where there are super athletic teams who are slightly doing the wrong thing. Armagh have changed, I think, and they're now a kicking team as well. So
absolutely.
And Mayo looking to have a proper final. This is your full forward, Aidan. That's going to be the end of your career. Go for it. Like, I think that.
Go on. Sorry.
I think that's happening.
Yeah. I think it's a look. You know, and you follow NFL as I do, and they often talk in the NFL about establishing the run game so you can actually throw the pass. And I think it's the same thing in Gaelic football, because you know, people were going on saying, "Oh, Meath kicked a lot. Meath did a lot of running with the ball in the last 2 games," and it's a situation where if you are as a defence feel that these guys are going to kick the ball for you, you are naturally going to take a step back, because you're afraid of the ball going in over the top. Fellas can kick the ball accurately from 45, 50 yards. They should be able to anyhow. So all of a sudden your defence as a natural thing just sits back a little bit. It doesn't push up as much. So you can mix it then. If you put long balls in, should I say, and you have fellas taking their men on, well then actually what you can do then is the next time is you can run it, because the space will be there.
Yeah.
It has to be there. And it's a different situation obviously when you can catch fellas on the break and stuff like that. But if you're naturally playing, now it is difficult when you come up against some of the more, shall we say, the teams that are very, very adept at just pouring men behind the ball. So let's say Tyrones or Donegals who are very defensive. How will Meath shape up with that? So how does that kicking game, and have you got the patience then to be able to recycle, and you end up in a dogfight where it's 10-7 or 10-8?
Yeah,
you know. So when it's,
if you haven't worked on the 2 or 3 opportunities you get in the game, if you haven't absolutely honed the craft of hitting 40-yard balls into somebody, then you're going to miss those opportunities, and that you'll never get the opportunity to settle them. So.
Correct. Well, if you watch a game and you watch a game back and you see, you know, the classic where, say, a team are attacking, and all of a sudden the ball breaks down and it comes out to that extra man, say a half back or a half forward. If you see and he puts his head down straight away, that's it. Like in training, you need to say stop.
Yeah.
So his head has to be straight up, and he has to be thinking of, where is my 11?
Yeah,
where is my man? And actually, Meath have Scully on half forward line, who's a really good player. He gets his head up himself, but exactly the same thing. Some of the better teams who are taking those risks have to realise that as an 11, he should have 40 or 50 yards of space left and right from him. I should be able to play the ball to him, and then it literally should be him pinging it straight in. No man is going to get back quicker than that.
Right.
So that is the pass. That is the pass that kind of unlocks the key.
We'll keep an eye out for those passes, those key passes in next week, the week after when the football is back. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
No bother. Cheers, lads.
Anthony Moyles giving us some thoughts there on the football over the course of the weekend. Now, a special treat for us this morning. I'm delighted to say we're joined by the Sultans of Ping FC drummer Morty McCarthy, all the way from Stockholm. Hey, Morty, how are you?
Sounds familiar.
How are you getting on? Can you hear us all right, Morty?
Hi there, can you hear us?
I can, yeah, loud and clear coming through. How are you getting on?
Getting on fine here, getting ready for the gigs this weekend in Cork. We have 2 shows to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the WLP.
A homecoming, it must be pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, yeah. I mean, we haven't played in Cork since 2014. You know, we don't play that often, so it's really nice to go back home and celebrate the album's release.
So, was that a life-changing moment when the album comes out? Do you know that it's going to be successful when you're recording it? What was that like?
Well, I suppose, you know, the previous year when Where's My Jumper was the first single came out, I mean, you know, it did very well, and the subsequent singles did well also. So, I mean, we kind of knew the album would do pretty okay. Yeah, it was a whirlwind, to be honest. The first 2 or 3 years of the band, we were constantly touring, you know, mostly in the UK and a lot in Europe and Japan. So it was a fantastic time for the band. So it's nice to get to play all these tracks again.
How did you guys all come together?
So Niall started the band, the singer. He was in Rochestown College, and then I actually saw the band. Their first ever Cork gig was '89, and really liked the band. So I ended up being the manager, and then in '91 I started playing drums for them, and we signed in 1991 in June.
Right. Okay. So that is a whirlwind. What age are you at that stage?
So I was 22, and the lads were just 20. So yeah, we're very young, very innocent.
And I'd say having the time of your lives.
Having the time of my life, yeah. I mean, I think, I was a Cork City fanatic at the time, and I loved the band, but I do remember 1993 when City actually won the league for the first time. I missed the game because Sultans, we were playing a show in Holland, so there was a bit of a divide there sometimes between the football and the music.
Were you tempted to miss the gig and watch the match? Is that was there a bit of tension?
I was sorely tempted. I mean, a Cork team hadn't won the league since 1974, so to miss, 19 years later, to miss the penultimate game up in the RDS was very hard to take. But I was glad we won. We won anyway because I'd seen us lose too many times.
Do you still get plenty of Cork games in, Morty? I know you're living in Sweden at the moment, so I'm sure it makes it a little bit more difficult to watch them.
Yeah, it's a bit more difficult than before, but I do get 6 or 8 games a season. I'll go off to Dublin one weekend if there's a good game in Dublin, and I get home quite often, so I'm there as often as I can.
You're not tempted to follow a team over there?
So Hammarby is our team in Stockholm, so myself and my son have season tickets. They're hugely supported. They're kind of more of a cult team, to be honest. They've only ever won the league once, and they've been going over 100 years. But no, I really enjoy it, but it's not the same as your home club, obviously. But my son loves it, so I enjoy going to the games with him.
There's obviously a shared interest in football in the band. Like the clip, the song that we play out on the football show is obviously "Give 'Em a Ball in the Yard of Grass." Was it a shared love of music and football? Which came first?
I would say both, actually. We all went to this bar in Cork called the Liberty Bar, and everybody was fanatical about music and sport. I mean, within the band, I think Niall and Pat, they didn't really rate the League of Ireland. Used to laugh at me going to see League of Ireland games. Niall is a huge Forest fan and still goes to games regularly in the UK, but they just made fun of me all the time for supporting League of Ireland. But I've stuck with it, yeah, and I think they're coming around now. They've been to a few games when they've been back in the last few years.
What's the crack with Give 'Em a Ball in the Yard of Grass? What's the backstory to it?
So that was Niall, again, Forest. It's a song about Nigel Clough, who played for Forest back then. We had a very close association with Forest. We played a lot in Nottingham. Stuart Pearce used to come to the gigs. Nottingham Forest actually released a flexi disc of that song first, which was given out to all the fans at the City Ground. And we've never actually met Nigel. He came to the show one time in Sheffield, but we still haven't met him. So maybe someday.
There you go. Surely this now, 30 years on, now's the time to do it.
30s, yeah, so maybe take a trip to Burton if he's still there. I'm not sure if he's still at Burton or not, but yeah, it would be great to see him.
Surely there's Roy Keane link in here somewhere then. We've got Cork and Nottingham Forest. You're ticking a lot of boxes here, Morty.
I know, it's amazing. We've never actually met Roy Keane. We obviously idolise the guy. He's a true Cork warrior, but we've never met him. But, we follow him and we enjoy his football punditry on TV.
Are you allowed to pick a favourite song, or is that like asking between, or to choose your favourite kid?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, I like 2 of the slower songs, actually. I guess Let's Go Shopping and 2 Pints of Raza would be my 2 favourites from the record. So we'll be playing both of them this weekend.
The decision to come back and do a 30th anniversary tour, is it easy? Because the comforting blanket of nostalgia, even when you're talking about 2 Pints of Raza and Let's Go Shopping, they're amazing. The whole album just worked as this delicious little slice of pop and indie glory. It was very much a product of its time, but now it still sounds fresh and brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the internet especially has been very, very kind to us, and the likes of yourself playing Give 'Em a Ball, so the name has kind of been kept in the public eye through the years through various things. And yeah, I mean, we don't play too often these days. I think we'd be knackered, to be honest, if we had to do a tour. So I mean, just a couple of shows a year is enough just to keep it going. We really enjoy it.
I remember about 10 years ago being on one of those work night outs where it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and you end up in the club and you're like, I have not been in the club in a very long time. And then Where's My Jumper comes on and all the kids are going mad. I'm like, all right. So Where's My Jumper obviously has just had a second life and a third life and a fourth life. It's kind of immortal.
Yeah, and I think, the Young Offenders movie and the series was obviously very, very popular with the younger kids in Ireland, and Where's My Jumper finished out the movie. So I think that's probably got a lot to do with it as well, to attract a new audience, for sure.
So 2 gigs this week in Cork. What's the rest of the year looking like for you guys?
We don't know, to be honest. We're like people who play in a cup match. If we get knocked out, that's it. But maybe we'll go into extra time and get into the next round. So we never actually decide on doing another show until we finish one. So we'll see after the weekend in Cork what we're going to do.
Are you all still mates after all the years?
Oh, we're all still good mates. Yeah. where, you know, we just sit in the pub and talk about football, basically. To be honest, that's what we do when we get together. We could do a bit more practice. I think we spend too much time talking football and not enough time practicing, but it's kind of always on the edge of chaos, but it generally works out on the night.
Yeah, big weekend for Cork and the GA as well. Morty, I know you follow the GA. We were just chatting to Anthony Moyles about it. I mean, proper dual county and really impressing on both fronts at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cork has really suffered in the last 15, 20 years, sporting-wise. I mean, the hurlers haven't won for such a long time. So it was great to win against Limerick, who are a fantastic team. So there's hope, I think. And the footballers had a fantastic win. You know, I was disappointed they lost to Meath, but great win up in Kildare. And you know, Cork City are back in the Premier League again after a couple of year absence. So I think the future's looking bright for Cork. But you know, we still have a bit of work to do if we want to catch up with the likes of Limerick and Shamrock Rovers. You know, if we want to compete at the top table again.
Well, listen, tickets are available on corkoperahouse.ie. Morty, it's great to have you with us. Finally make contact after all these years of playing the song in the evening. We have a great response to it every time it goes out, and we're delighted to be able to. So thanks a million and enjoy the gig.
Thanks a lot, lads. All the best.
It's Morty McCarthy there, the drummer with the Sultans of Ping FC, to round out today's show. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Busy show for us tomorrow. We're going to join Derek McNamara is going to be back in studio giving us the stats on the rugby at the weekend. Brisbane Lions teammates Dara Joyce and Conor McKenna will join us live from Australia, and plenty more as well. There'll be more reaction to Manchester City news on Off the Ball this evening. A couple of quick comments for you. DuPont is their sexton, says John Mack. Lads, this Irish rugby success isn't going to last forever, so enjoy it while it's here and get on the hype train.
Exactly. Why are we so negative? Some people in the comments are calling for me to get the sack for predicting Ireland would win the World Cup, but I mean, get over ourselves.
Patrick Cahill is the person you should name him. Please sack Shane. He's gone on a mad one. He's going to jinx everything.
I'm not going to jinx it.
Do you not? So you're a scientist, though. Do you not believe in chaos theory, that the little butterfly flapping its wings is finding its way right as we speak? That Razzie screen grabbing the video, Ireland are going to win the World Cup, and then it's being projected into like giant. Look at these leprechauns, thinking they're going to beat us.
No.
What are we? And it'll be you. You know,
I'll be on the dressing room wall.
Yeah, they'll come out wearing masks and Shane will be like, "What? Oh God, if I could have that moment back again, I'd jam that genie back in the bottle."
Own it. Why can't we own these things? Why can't we be good and also know we're good?
Well, I would largely agree with you, right? Except professional sports people are totally weird. They turn every imagined slight into like.
Suppose they have to, don't they?
Do you remember? It was Ballyhale were like, when they won the All Ireland, the speeches they gave afterwards, we used that and we nursed that grievance, and then we won the All Ireland the next year. You're like, well, that's a bit strange.
Yeah. Do you not think us getting knocked out of the World Cup at the last day stage or before every year is a mentality thing? I think it is.
I think there's definitely a connection to
mentality's different now. This team are the number one team in the world, and they show it. And I don't think they're afraid to be up there like Irish teams gone by. So there's something different. That's all I'm saying, Ger. It feels different this year.
News coming through this morning that Richard Cockrell is leaving the England setup after the Six Nations. He was the last remaining of the coaches as part of the Eddie Jones era. So, I mean, it's fair enough. I think Steve Borthwick wants his own team there, and by the time the Six Nations is over, he'll have decided exactly what he wants. He seems to have been a little bit surprised by how bad the team were. Darren McAlinden says it's in our DNA to be pessimistic, get behind Ireland. And then Barry Clark says, lads, I was at the game in Cardiff, just leaving Bristol this morning, Christmas present from the wife. Great weekend, and have to say, Ger, Wales supporters were absolutely fantastic, says Baz. Well, that's great. I'm glad you had a good time, Barry. I think maybe when they win, they're less cracked to be around.
I think Aisling and Gordon Darcy in the press box had a pint of beer come down upon them. I know you'd been warning Aisling about
people puking on her.
Yeah, and being careful in the press box.
That's the traditional welcome.
I don't know if it was a full pint glass or what it was, but certainly something came down from the heavens, and it didn't come from an airplane. So, it's always one of those dodgy press boxes, I'd imagine, to be in.
Hill 16 says Wales in red. Fair enough. Mayo in either red or orange, and Scotland in green. Oh, Mayo. What? I think Mayo were pretty happy with the 17 points apiece draw in Armagh.
Unbeaten. A draw against Galway in Armagh.
Yeah.
Why would they be upset? Played really well as well.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. That was by the way a classic game. We didn't give that game enough credit, but that Armagh Mayo game, just chaos. And Armagh are a team that just
15,000 in the
the Athletic Grounds.
Yeah.
The box at Athletic Grounds, as they're now known. But really, really good atmosphere. It appeared 17 points to 12 down with 10 minutes left, and Armagh they love those. Geezer just loves those moments where the backs are against the wall. Armagh aren't fancy to pick up any points at home. It's a disappointment. And then they just pick off 5 points without reply. It was brilliant.
And the game doesn't ultimately matter at the end of the year. It's like just an opportunity for them to get everybody as fit as they possibly can. Michael Collins says, how can they be the highest commercial revenue earners in Europe within 10 years in their previous position? City's history will be forever tainted. Well, we'll see. If Man City have been breaking fair play rules, hammer them. But what difference does it actually make to the 11 they put out on the pitch? Well, every difference, I guess, Terry, in that it allows you to put players out and pay them more than they would be otherwise getting paid, and so therefore they wouldn't sign for you in the first place, which I think would strengthen your team.
Yeah, like City fans are going to point at Chelsea and go, look at them, look, they've done things as well. They have a £1.5 billion rolling debt to Roman Abramovich, but two wrongs don't make a right. So I think an example, if City are found guilty, an example needs to be made of them. As Martin Lipton said, a fine is probably the most realistic thing here, but I don't think any of City's rivals would accept that as going far enough if they're found guilty.
Yeah, the whole financial doping thing, though, it is kind of a can of worms where there'll be a lot of the Spider-Man meme going around.
Yeah,
for those clubs, like
who isn't at it?
Well, you know, Blackburn win because they have the most money and can sign the best players, and then Manchester United go on spending spree for a decade and a half and win all the time, and it's like it was smaller money though. It was local money.
Yeah.
It's not the same. They earned all that money. It's like, well, you know,
this is golf money. The money is different.
It's not.
Well, it's
not different. It's the same money.
Yeah, but
you can't say it's different money. It's
the numbers, like, look, £815 million spent,
but
by
the
Premier League
principle
clubs.
is the same.
Principle is the same, but Jesus, the numbers have just gone through the roof.
Well, Jack Walker, he made his money from the ground up, literally. He'd take stuff out of the ground, he'd sell it for money, and then that got us Alan Shearer. Like, yeah, but why did you get Alan Shearer? Well, I don't know.
You're not having it.
Well, I just think that, like, there will be a lot of whataboutery.
Yeah.
Like, what about all of Chelsea's money that they were all able to do before financial fair play? Like, it's a fair point.
I think as a football fan looking at that news across the weekend, you're a bit exhausted. You're like, well, we're all so used to it now because of the whole sports washing and everything that's gone on in football in the last 10 years. We come to expect stories like this now. So it's like, oh, that's just football. The bad guys sometimes win.
All right. Sometimes or all the time?
All the time.
9:40 this morning. We're going to play out with some Pat Nevin goodness. The news had obviously broken that Jesse Marsch had been fired, and clearly that this story is big and getting bigger. So we'll play out with this and we'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.
And you're very welcome back. It's Richie McCormick here with you tonight. I'm delighted to say, after a weekend of contrasting results, which have for North London sides, which have had an interesting impact on the Premier League title race, and a day in which Leeds have sacked their manager Jesse Marsch, it's all go. Pat Nevin joins us to wrap up what has been an eventful 72 hours, Pat. It's been quite something. I don't think the news has realised that it's a bank holiday over here, and we seem to have had a deluge of items befall us today.
Yeah, a good day to get bad news out, I think, because there's so much going on.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, and you just wake up this morning and you think, I mean, all the way back to Friday when I watched the Chelsea game, and everyone was expecting them to do this amazing new I was going to say million, but it's getting towards billion team out there, and that was a big story, and that's like gone, man. That's miles away. That's an eternity away. You watch Manchester City play the way they did. Was really surprising. They were kind of dull, but I think there's a few people thinking, oh, I get that now. I think there's one or two things in the background they're worrying about. But yeah, there's so many massive stories just now, particularly in the Premier League. I mean, Liverpool, for goodness sake, they give me 3-0. They're mid-table. It's not a meltdown, but it ain't far off it. It's extraordinary how much is going on.
It's been a rapid paced 72 hours and more, as you mentioned, going back to that Friday night West London 0-0 draw. We'll start with the Manchester City story. Obviously, Pat, it today broke. The Premier League have adjudged that they have broken a series of financial rules dating back to the 2009-2010 season. So ultimately, across these span of seasons, it looks like 100 plus rule breaches in terms of finances. This is going to be investigated by an independent panel. They won't have the luxury of going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, as they have had previously in other financial investigations that involved or were centred around UEFA. In essence, as you mentioned, this may have been preying on people's minds yesterday, but certainly this is going to have a massive impact on how the remainder of Manchester City's season goes.
It could well have that. It's strange when you get 100 breaches, and I've trawled through and I can see one that I kind of know about, that kind of, and it was a sponsorship deal that they allegedly inflated. But there's other complaints as well. These will be complex things, and anyone who says, "Oh yeah, I know what's happening here," don't believe them, right? Because they don't. There's a lot of work to be done on this. And Manchester City have got phenomenal lawyers, and they're going to work on that as well. But what is interesting, if they are found guilty of some of the more extreme allegations that are set towards them, they're talking about points deduction, etc. However, there is another bigger question. Yet we'll deal with that question as it comes. But there's a bigger question. What about all these people that are buying into the Premier League, putting all the money into it, and then they realise, well, actually, we might get done for that. We might get sued for that. A lot of them are thinking, do we want to do that anymore? Shall we just bog off to Italy or Spain or something like that? So, the Premier League, well done them for whatever who's doing it and looking at it and being hopefully honest about it. And it sounds as if they are honest about it. But it's one of those ones that get this big gun out and just about to shoot themselves in the foot. And well done. You seem to have the honour to do that. So I applaud them for looking at it closely, because if they've done things that are unfair, then they shouldn't be let away with it, because, other clubs hopefully play by the rules. Well, and note the hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. This dates back, the investigation I think goes as far back as about 4 years or so. So this has been coming. Manchester City would have been aware that this is in the works, but now it's something that they actively have to deal with, and they'll be lawyering up and they'll be preparing to go the distance with this. It hasn't necessarily cleared the clouds over the Etihad regarding yesterday's results against Tottenham, because I think from the off, when you look at the last couple of weeks in terms of the player turnover with João Cancelo heading out on loan and all parties saying that no, everybody got on grand here, despite the fact that he's one of the best fullbacks in the world and they've gifted him to Bayern Munich for the rest of the season. And then you see the starting lineup come out yesterday and Kevin De Bruyne is on the bench, and you're kind of thinking, what is going on here? And the result, the way it panned out, makes you think that either Pep Guardiola is trying to make things difficult for himself to give himself a challenge, or there is something a little bit off in the state of Manchester City.
I think, actually, I'm not writing Manchester City off just now, but certainly their style didn't seem there. And maybe that's, remember, it's very, very hard to keep that style going for a long time. Remember, it was, the likes of David Silva, it was De Bruyne at his very, very best, and these are phenomenal players. Now, Silva's gone, you've got another Bernardo Silva in, you've got other players, but to try and keep the same thing going to the same level, you can see what Pep tried to do. He brought in Grealish and he's tried to adapt it a little bit. But it ain't easy to keep on going at that level, and particularly keeping that same style within the group. And watching it yesterday, you thought, they look a wee bit figured out there. They really did look a little bit figured out by Spurs. And Spurs can blow very hot and very cold as well. So whether it's, Pep's a little bit frustrated because he's not got the team doing what he wants to do, maybe there was a little discomfort in the camp with a number of players. When a player leaves, I don't know if Cancelo was incredibly popular within the group. You know what it's like in sports teams. If one of your best mates goes, yeah, they're selfish people, football people and sports people generally, it's just nature of the beast. But when one of the best mates goes, you think, oh, wait a minute, that could be next. That could be possibility of playing on it as well. The thing is, we don't know, but it doesn't look right at the moment. But if you look across, the number of teams where it doesn't look right, it doesn't look right at Liverpool at the moment. It certainly didn't look right at Chelsea for a long time at the moment. And there's a lot of teams where, they've been on top for a long, long time. It doesn't last forever. And see, when you need to make those changes, you better get them right. And they're not easy. And particularly if you're Manchester City and the others I mentioned there, you're paying top dollar for everything. You're paying over the odds for everything. Hence the temptation, to go back to where we started, to maybe overpay and maybe do things that are not exactly cutting corners, but playing a little bit fast and loose with the rules. That's just the way they do it. But looking at City yesterday, it was that was really, really, really surprising. I have to say, second half particularly, you just thought, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
What did you make?
It doesn't deserve to happen.
Yeah, what did you make of Guardiola's comments afterwards, where he talked about the time that it takes to get down to London and back from Manchester? I mean, this isn't the first time that they've gone from Manchester to London. It's a fairly common journey for teams from the northwest of England, and yet this seemed to have been raised last night, saying it was a 4.5 hour trip from. Now, I don't know if they were driving individually by a car, whether they got stuck on the motorway or whatever, but it seems like an odd one to pull out after what was effectively a narrow defeat last night.
Yeah, there's a limit of sympathy you're going to get from quite a lot of it, to be fair. considering, a lot of the times we go by planes, some of us remember those long journeys from London to Newcastle, and terrible weather and awful, basically just a whole bus. You're not talking a luxury coach or anything like that. Sometimes it's just an old bus, and you have to make sure you'll be able to deal with it. Remember, they've got a very, very decent sized squad as well, which should be able to adapt it. Look, it seems like an odd one, and it almost, in fact, it doesn't almost. It sounds like deflection. That sounds awfully like deflection to me. That's like, people will talk about that now. Yeah, well, let's ignore that and let's get back onto the real subject, why he ain't playing very well. And I ain't that. Yeah. That's not the real big problem. It's something much more than that. I mean, Kevin De Bruyne had come on and looked a little bit of a shadow of himself. So the question is it an age thing? Can he keep on doing it week in, week out, or 2 or 3 times a week? Or is it the fact that he's just playing and having to play him a little bit injured when he's not fully fit? All of these things could be possible, but I'm taking the coach journey as deflection. I'm taking it that way.
Well, we have to fit a lot in, Pat, so we'll move on to events at Goodison, your former side Everton there on Saturday afternoon. In retrospect, we probably should have seen this coming to a degree, because Sean Dyche goes in there, has a pretty limited amount of time with which to work with his new Everton players, and it would be a former Burnley man who gets the only goal of the game. But they looked a side reborn with Sean Dyche going in there from what they had been under Frank Lampard. There was an energy about them that I haven't seen in about 18 months there.
There's once or twice I've seen it with Everton, but it's only been once or twice, and it's only been for parts of games. Yet you watch that there, and it basically simplified everything. Unbelievably simplified. There was a lot of physicality there. He's got them whipped up. He's got them, interesting. One of the quotes he said that some of the players felt they'd let Frank down. Would have been better to kind of show it in a different way, maybe way before the game. However, getting those players to put all that energy in. I mean, the amount of cross balls they get in, the amount of physicality and attacking the balls. Sometimes see all the intricate stuff. Dump it if you have to. It hurts me to say it, but if you're in a physically hurts me to say it. But sometimes that's what's needed. The dogs of war stuff. Now, Everton have done it before, back in Joe Royal times as well. Moyes had a period of that. Sometimes you have to dig in and make sure you've got guys on the pitch that were wanted to fight. But maybe if we could put it in one guy. I've seen Onana a couple of times recently, and honestly, it looked as if he was playing the five-a-side game and he wasn't interested quite a few of the games. But he's got everything you need to be absolutely superb. Yeah, in watch Dyche, and straight inside his head, and he looks like a world beater. So it may well be the simple thing is Dyche is very good at getting a lift. The question remains, can he keep that lift going? They're not that far off. There's decent enough players there. The good thing, and here's the ultra good thing for Everton, the physicality is there. It's actually there. What Sean does, the kind of the clay and that he has to mould that team's actually there. So although they went for Bielsa first, which I thought was bizarre, lovely, that's the Everton spirit, skill of science, all that sort of stuff. Not the right players. Yeah. Whereas Dyche, absolutely. So they've got a chance now.
Even things like bringing in, like Abdoulaye Doucouré famously had been made to jog the perimeters at the Finch Farm pitches because he was a bad influence, it would seem, on the rest of the Everton dressing room, and he looked like he was a player reborn again. They looked like they could compete, and they looked like they believed they could compete through each single minute of that game. As you mentioned, consistency is going to be the thing, but again, having that consistency of effort throughout the game was something that I hadn't seen again in a while.
It is strange because working under various managers through your career, some brilliant, some less so, and the ones that get the most out of players, it's not the ones that shout or the ones that are nice or the ones that do this, do that. It's the ones that absolutely understand the psyche of every individual. That's not easy. And making sure that all the best players you've got are available to you and on the pitch and doing their best. And it sounds the simplest thing in the world. It's amazing how many people can't get it done. Frank leaving, he's done it a couple of times. He did it at Chelsea as well. Leaving people out where if everyone else is thinking, why are you doing that? And he's, morally thinking because he's not behaving correctly. Well, sometimes you need to almost steamroll over that sort of stuff and say, right, I don't care. I'm going to get you in here and I don't care what it takes. And I know how to get inside your psyche. And to be fair, Ginger Mourinho's been doing that for a long time. He's fabulous at it. And and so at the end of Burnley, he left Burnley, but to keep them where they were for as long was monumental, absolutely monumental. And I think in many ways, Everton have landed very, very lucky by getting him now. They could have made a lot worse decisions on it, but he's for all the shouting and the simplicity of tactics sometimes, there's no simplicity in the man.
Is this Premier League title race still a two-horse race, or is there a third or possibly even fourth involved in this now?
Yeah, I think there could be. You just remember Sir Alex Ferguson always used to say, the title race begins in January. Or before that, you can have a good time and little runs here and there. Right, whoever can put it together between now and the end of the season can charge. The charge from United's been brilliant. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And it was very, very hard to predict it as well from where they were. Rashford coming from a player who I watched the last season and a half thinking, I don't think it's physical, I think it's mental what's wrong, because you've got everything there but watching your body language. And then you look at it now and you think, is it he just didn't want to be near Ronaldo? Not that I want to be the main man, but didn't like playing second fiddle, purely because he was having to do work maybe twice a week. It might have been something as simple as that. But he's come in now. He's got a brilliant reaction from the team. So there's no doubt they're in it. I have to say, I'd rule Newcastle out. I've been to see them recently. I was at their recent cup games, and it's fabulous. They've got through the cup final, but quality-wise and depth-wise, I think it's not quite there. It will be, but it's not there yet. So yeah, there are teams that Arsenal definitely got a chance, but they've got their problem of Everton sussed how to beat and how to do Arsenal right. So who have they got next? Brentford. Yeah. They do exactly the same thing to them. Yeah. And Brentford will be saying, yes, let's have a go at that one. I'll be at that game. I'm going to that game, so I cannot wait. It's different, obviously, it's at Emirates, but it should be a cracker. Sure. We will find out a lot about Arsenal in that one.
Yeah. I'd get the coming weeks are going to tell their own tale. All our football, of course, brought to you by Sky. Watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend, live on Sky. The other big news today, Pat, of course, is Jesse Marsch paying for Leeds' run of form. That defeat to Nottingham Forest, basically bookending a period where they haven't won since before the World Cup. Now, they haven't been blown out of the water, I don't think, in any of those matches they've had since. There's been a few draws. They've had a couple of cup wins. But it's starting to lose to teams around them, and watching teams around them in the Premier League table begin, like Everton, to get an uptick in form and to begin to kind of sing again, whereas Leeds don't look like they can hold a tune at the moment. Where do they go next after sacking Jesse Marsch?
Well, first thing is, I'm the worst person to ask, right? Because I've been to see Leeds about 4 times this season, and they've been utterly brilliant every time, and they've won every game. Even I was down at the Accrington Stanley game, it's only Accrington Stanley, but I saw them wipe the floor with Chelsea. Every team I've sent along the brilliant. It's a tough one. I agree with you. I think it's harsh in Marsch, because you look at the teams that I looked at them before. Arsenal beat them 1-0. Fulham, they're doing well, 3-2, single goal, usual stuff. Newcastle, flying high, draw. Brentford, flying high, draw. No one really hammers them. It's just the odd goal. And what it does tell you is one simple thing. The difference between success and failure in the Premier League is stunningly, stunningly small. You wouldn't be surprised had they stuck by them a wee bit more and they might have got out of it and cruised along the mid-table. I wouldn't have been surprised with that, because they've got some very good players in there and they all clearly liked working for the manager. But where do they go now? That's the question. That's a hard one, because you could see the transition from Bielsa to Jesse Marsch. What did he do now? Did he get another sort of similar-ish attitude of, high intensity, ultra attacking, or did he go to somebody who's a, hired hand, gun for hire, somebody who does normal things and just keeps them in the division? He may well do that. I have to say, I think that's a tricky one. I don't know if they're the right team to do that with. So, if it would be me, oddly enough, and I know a lot of Leeds fans don't think about it, 2 things I would have done. I probably would have stuck with them, and B, I would have got me a season ticket there, because I think that would have saved them.
You're clearly the good luck charm. They've got some rough games coming up. They've got that trip to Manchester United on the way, home and away in the Premier League, which oddly come so close together within 4 days. And then they've got Everton, obviously another team around them, Southampton, who are obviously in trouble themselves. And then to your former side, Chelsea. They've got a decent footballing squad. They backed them in the January transfer window, which is always the most perverse thing when they decide to sack a manager a couple of weeks later. And they're all players who are brought in his own image. So there are guys coming in from the Bundesliga. There are people like Weston McKennie who made their name in that league and went off and maybe didn't have the best of times at Juventus coming in. And you're thinking that he's going to get the best out of these. They've got Patrick Bamford coming back fit again. Surely they can get out of this. And they're just a frustrating side. They're a frustrating entity, I think, is probably what I'm getting at here.
It is a shame though, but there is a massive fear. Obviously, you go to a Leeds game and the noise that you get there, the backing you get there, and never mind whether in the Premier League or not, it's always the same. It's brilliant, right? So it's a great place to go and watch football. The backing they give their team when they're doing okay, or just fighting the way they should be fighting, is extraordinary. It's as good as anyone in the league. You know, them and Newcastle, they're the best. And you go there, it's just fantastic start to finish. But the demands are high, and the demands when that crowd, it's that vociferous, then starts turning either towards the manager or towards the board panic. That's what happens. It just happens every single time. And you know, they're going to have to make a decision now. Strange if they've made a decision and they don't have the answer yet. See, if you make a bigger call as that, you should have the answer. Wait, you should be sitting there. You know, why do it now, then go and search for somebody? They should have the answer ready. They should have thought about this going forward, and it may well be the case. But see if they leave it even 2 or 3 games, that might be too late. That might absolutely and utterly blow it for them, because at the end of this season, there's going to be about 7 or 8 clubs down there. There's going to be a point here or there. And that sort of slowness in decision, that sort of, if you're going to make it, make it. And if they don't get that right and they don't do it right quickly, they'll be down there for the rest of the season.
Yeah, okay. Pat Nevin, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you as ever, and to pack so much in as well. It was a thankless task. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again next week.
Pleasure as always.
Cheers, Pat.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.